A rainy, cool morning in our nation's capital. It is time for the Tamarack Homes Ottawa International Marathon. We welcome all of you joining us. My name is Arash Madani. Reed Coolset, a resident Olympian, is here. Jenna Ladd. We are looking forward to what should be an outstanding day after what was a terrific 10K. Before we get into what's going to be an outstanding Sunday, let's kind of look back on what we saw yesterday. And it began with Florence Caron in the road race, winning her first national championship here in Ottawa.
What an amazing performance for her. I've been thinking about it all night. I'm sure she has as well. And I know through Canadian Athletics online, and it's been a buzz. So I hope she's enjoying a nice sleep in this morning and, relishing in her success.
What did we learn about Caron that we didn't know before?
I don't know. I mean, I kind of presumed she was going to win, and she did. But I think she just stamped that, she's performing at a very high level over the last year, and she's still there. And I would say this was still another little step forward in what she's done before. It wasn't that far off of her track performance from last year. And big things to come.
Big things to come. Will she make the transition from the track to the road to the marathoning? That remains to be seen. One more on the track in Guelph in June for Caron before she goes back to her training stable in Flagstaff, Arizona. And then Andrew Alexander, who was in a heck of a fight with Thomas Fafard. Back and forth they went the last 1,000 meters or so, neck and neck. One guy took the lead, the other, and then it was Alexander, Jenna, who held on.
Yeah, we actually have an interesting sort of information story that Reed shared with us last night. We actually had someone at the finish line filming it in case it was, a neck and neck, nose to nose. So we're glad we had someone there just in case. So it was a close call, but what an amazing finish. It was great for the city to witness such a battle in the end, and great for Alex.
And what we saw from Andrew Alexander crossing the finish line was the Vlad Guerrero shush sign. Like you could tell this meant a lot to him.
Yeah. Andrew's had a lot of close battles on the roads lately, and he's just such a tough runner. You can never count him out, and he got the win this go around in a national championship to boot. So really deserving. He's such a great character, great guy, and hard worker.
All right, so let's get to the marathon, and what a day this could be for Rory Linkletter. He ended up crossing the finish line second last year out of Calgary, Alberta, and now he comes into this thing with his sights set on winning his first marathon of his career. He knows the course. We'll talk a little bit about his strategy going into it, but this feels like a really important moment, Reed, in the career of Rory Linkletter.
Yeah, I would say so. He did the Boston Marathon, Ottawa Marathon double last year, and that was a big learning experience for him. And honestly, I wouldn't have predicted it was going to go that well. And he did. He ran superb at both races. And so now that he's done that again, he kind of knows a bit more of what to expect from his body. He knows the course a little bit better. I mean, it was such a close race last year, and he almost won. He's up against a really strong runner in Shura Katata, who ran 2:03 this year as well. He ran that back in February, Seville, so it's a bit more recovery than Rory does coming from Boston. But he's going to put up a good fight.
You were really impressed with what you saw from Rory last year.
I was, yeah. I had the pleasure of briefly meeting Rory before the race, and I got to know him a little bit. But I just watching him fly, and I watched him at Boston both years. I watched him in Ottawa. I think it was an incredible show of Canadian talent, and especially almost winning this event. We haven't seen, that kind of performance from a Canadian for a little while. So it was really, really great to see that representation and his enthusiasm about the course and the race and the feedback he provided too.
So let's take a look at this course map as you take a glimpse into the starting line. Wet conditions here in Ottawa today, rain expected throughout. You see some people have the ponchos on as they're getting loose, some people opting not. And this is a race, Jenna, of course, 42 kilometers, the first 500 meters uphill crossing Parliament Hill on Wellington Street, and then it's go time.
We circle back right here all the way to our War Museum, and at this point here we get a little bit of an uphill, so that's when the pack starts to separate. Crossing into the Quebec side, it becomes a little bleaker. It is lots of turns, lots of shade when it is a warmer day. Might protect the runners a little bit from the rain, but there are some ups and downs and undulations here, and then as they cross the Alexandria Bridge back into the city, there is a nice uphill preparing them for the uphills of Rockcliffe. So heading out towards that 20K point, you can see there is a lookout. Beautiful. Not so much when you're running uphill. You get that turnaround. With luck, you might see our Prime Minister out near his residence. And then we head back into the city, and that's when all the crowds gather. And this last back half is relatively flat. There's a couple uphills as we do the turnarounds at Dow's Lake and towards the end of the road. Now, something to note, though, here as we go south on the canal, it's a bit of a false flat. So there are some areas that feel flat that do end up going up just so slightly, so it can bag the legs a little bit more. Athletes will cross over the bridge to Dow's Lake. That is essentially the last major hill of substance, and then north on the canal here towards the end. So this back half, these last few kilometers can end up very, very, very fast, depending on the athlete's skill.
Yeah, they've only made a couple of changes this year compared to last. They added an out and back around the 5 to 6 kilometer mark at Tunney's Pasture, and then they removed an out and back on Lac des Filles in Gatineau. In Gatineau, it's a lot quieter. There are a few more potholes.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of element once you cross the bridge into Quebec.
It is, yeah, and like our city is so incredible at support. When we do get into the Gatineau side, there's less residential spaces. It's more of the federal office buildings. There's not as many places to go or places to park, and there's no public transportation running this morning. So it can be a little quieter. It can be a nice reprieve for athletes who need less of a crowd, who might maybe use the crowd to get them forward. Maybe they need to settle back into their pace and have some quiet. So it is a nice area for that. But if someone like Linkletter, who says he really enjoys the crowd, that would be a space for him to settle into maybe some selfish things at that point, and then use the crowd in the other areas to surge him forward if he needs that fight.
And you see the crowd there on the left-hand side of your screen. We're seeing everything from shorts to parkas, toques to umbrellas. As the athletes start getting loose, Reed, in these conditions, what's important as you deal with the cold, the wind, and especially the rain?
Yes, you want to stay warm right now. So during the race, you want to stay as cool as you can.
Right.
But right now, because it's about 10 or 11 degrees, you want your muscles to feel supple. You want them to feel loose. So you do a really quick warm up, like really short in duration for the marathon, because you have such a long race to go. You don't need to tire yourself out, but you do want to feel good when the gun goes off. So a little bit of warm up, staying warm. So you see a lot of these athletes. I would say you don't actually see as many, but you see a bunch of them that would have an extra layer on right now, and they would take it off last minute. But 10 degrees once you've done a little bit of warm up with your clothes on isn't really that cold. So you see the guys out there. They look relatively comfortable. These aren't necessarily great conditions to stand around and watch, but for running, I would take these conditions over a warm day anytime. And we've often seen warm days in Ottawa, so I think the athletes are actually quite excited about the weather today.
I like Rory's outfit there in that poncho, that clear poncho. I'm curious where he sourced it.
Well, Natasha Wodak is going to be a Canadian to watch, the 44-year-old from Vancouver competing in her 11th marathon. It was Wodak who was looking for an extra layer coming into this. And Natasha told us yesterday, I'm from Vancouver. I'm used to these conditions. This can actually be a competitive advantage for somebody who trains in weather like this.
Yeah, for sure. And often when you run the Ottawa Marathon, you often are training in 5 to 10 degree weather throughout March and April. Like that's normal.
Only to come here for temperatures in the high 20s.
Yeah, exactly. So now this is very much in line with a lot of the weather she would have seen in February, March, and April. And it's not necessarily the weather that the Ethiopians and Kenyans have seen. So yeah, it might play an advantage that not that these conditions are brutal for the Ethiopians and Kenyans, but they're just not as used to it.
Oh, and my mistake, that is not Rory. That is someone else.
It's the doppelganger.
There he is in the back. Yeah,
in the
doppelganger.
There's Linkletter there in the back. Wodak's also coming in with an interesting philosophy. She's going to have 3 pacers today. Among them, the 10K champion from yesterday, Andrew Alexander. Alex Sear will also be in the mix. And, you know, Natasha's point was, I want to have 2 of the 6 fastest half marathoners in Canada pacing me today.
Yeah, it's great having pacers that you can trust. I know it's not always the case. Sometimes you know, these pacers, they don't go as far as they intend. But you know, those guys are they're obviously really fit. They've hopefully recovered well enough from last night, and they're taller than Natasha, so they can block a lot of wind.
Counting down to the start of the Tamarack Homes Ottawa International Marathon, the 2026 version. We're about 3.5 minutes away here on Ottawa Race Weekend. Arash Madani alongside Jenna Ladd and Reed Coolset. 42.2 kilometers spanning 2 provinces up and down the Rideau Canal. They will go. It's a challenging course. Mm-hmm. But for Rory Linkletter, who ran this last year, he has understood where and when to go for it. Where and when fits best for him. And we'll talk about that as the race unfolds. How much of a competitive advantage can that be for the Calgarian?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this course does have a lot of turns. And there are pockets of areas where you can get ahead and you can edge out your competition by being smart and taking those corners and finding those surges and using those small uphills and downhills depending on your opponent's weaknesses and your strengths. So there's a lot of opportunity. This is a technical course in that sense. It's not like Boston that he just ran, which is a point-to-point, which you can't really get an edge based on turning as much on that course, whereas this one you can. The crowd too, he's with his Canadians, his
That's
peers.
right.
So he can lean on them. We're going to be rallying behind him further. I know our community is Team Linkletter. So I think that he can use all of that to his advantage in using those points and those major alcoves of people to push him forward, especially because he mentioned that does get him going.
It was interesting. Linkletter said last year, as situations presented themselves, I handled them well. That's an important part when you think about from a confidence standpoint. Yeah,
like Albert Carrier won last year, and he put moves on Rory, and Rory came back. He didn't come back to beat him, but clawed his way back closer to him. So Rory does know how to run this course. Last year being the first year, and so that's only going to give him more experience. And he knows if you know when the hills are coming and sort of the terrain after hills, like. If there's a steep hill and then it still kind of climbs afterwards, that's a lot different than just having a hill and it being over with as far as how you are going to use your energy going over those. So he knows all that. And yeah, like you talked about, he has the crowd support. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going to know his name, and very few people are going to know Shura Katata's name, even though he's, a great athlete, a 2:03 athlete. He's been second at New York City Marathon twice. He's won London, but he's not a household name like Rory is.
It was interesting. Rory said, "I'm not going to think about racing this until the canal." So that's an interesting strategy.
Yeah, and that's a great strategy, and I would say the same to any runner. It's the easiest part to get ahead. You can see ahead. There's not as many undulations up and down. I think that's a great strategy because the rest is so windy, so turny. There's construction, there's potholes, there's rain, there's so many elements. And he doesn't, he's going to feel out the field and how his fellow runners are feeling and be able to gauge where they are at before he can really make those moves and breaks.
The 2026 Ottawa Race Weekend, it is time for the Tamarack Homes Ottawa International Marathon. Yet again, in our nation's capital, a terrific lineup of elites. You see the forecast there. And we are underway as the runners get this 2026 edition going, and our eyes will be on Rory Linkletter, the 29-year-old from Calgary, Alberta. In the multicolored Puma singlet. Last year, winning the silver medal, crossing the finish line second. Lost it by 9 seconds to Albert Career, whose career ended up in a cloud of controversy in the aftermath of Ottawa. We'll get into that as our morning goes on. And for Linkletter, so much of this, he said, is how I'm going to respond in certain areas of the course. He said in the Rockcliffe Park, there's some ups and downs. He said you have to brace yourself for that moment, as you see the Pacers out in front now. And it was Linkletter said, I know there are spots I can take advantage of. He said, my ideal scenario is being in the lead pack going into the Rideau Canal. There's a couple of 180s to scout the competition and look for vulnerability.
Yeah, he's spot on. This is like exactly what we talked about, is that the first half has so many turns and moves, and this is the opportunity to really keep your head up and look around and be smart and gauge your competition. So he knows, and that's a really interesting element, and probably one of the reasons why he's returning. He was probably inspired by his performance last year to be able to do that.
So the first 500 meters of this course is uphill. The runners are crossing Parliament Hill on Wellington Street, and then from here, the next, 1,500 meters or so is downhill, where you actually lose more elevation than you gain.
Yeah, this is it's not a straightforward course, and what you guys were talking about earlier makes sense. Rory, you want to save as much energy as you can for the second half, and a lot of that's mental energy too. So if you can turn off your brain, just follow this pack instead of thinking about your splits, worried about your positioning. Just sit in the back of that pack and let it go. He's not worried about if it's a little bit fast or a little bit slow, right? And making those small corrections. He's not really worried about pace. He wants to win this race. He would rather win this race in a slow time than run a faster time and finish fifth, right? So his job right now is just to maintain contact with this pack with using the least amount of energy possible, and that's what Roy looks like he's doing right now.
And that's the difference between that 10K and the marathon, is that there's time. We've got time to make those moves. There's no need to make the moves early on and waste that energy.
And it looks like the masses are going off about 3 minutes after the elites. So that's interesting, because sometimes you see, some of these runners right now are very accomplished runners, very quick, and they would, like some of these top males would be running with the elite women, and that changes the dynamic of the race. So with the elites going off 3 minutes ahead of this pack, the elite women really have to think about who they're going to run with. They don't have maybe the advantage or disadvantage sometime of running with these some of these other runners. I know sometimes these runners in the masses will help the elite women. They'll block some wind, and depending on who you're running with, can be very advantageous, or they might be getting in their way. So it's really interesting to see that the elite race will be just decided amongst themselves versus having a lot of extra people.
Mm-hmm. And this general population here is the sub, I believe, 320 group. So you're getting some fast general pop folks coming through, and you never know. You might get some of them catching up if they're maybe misplaced here, but they will be followed closely behind those elites.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of runners in that pack we just saw who are capable of running under 240 Absolutely. In the marathon, and which is an incredible time and an incredible accomplishment. These type of athletes are they're qualifying for Boston without even really thinking about it, right?
The lead pack of the elite men, anchored by the Pacers, Rory Linkletter of Calgary, is at the back of that first chunk. Some people get timid in cold conditions, and Linkletter said when it gets yucky, that actually opens the door to give me a better chance to win.
Yeah, I mean, these conditions are really nice, but if you look at the extreme of something like Boston in 2018, when it was 2 or 3 degrees, raining very hard, I had no business finishing in the top 10 that year, and I did. You know, Krista Duchesne would probably say the same thing. She finished 3rd overall, and that surpassed any goal that she had really going into the race. So, you know, the conditions can really change things. These aren't extreme conditions, but they will play in favor of someone who has run in them a lot more than someone who doesn't run in those conditions.
Opening kilometer on the men's elite went in at 3:06.
They are still running downhill, so they will be running downhill for just a few more meters, and then it starts to level off a little bit before they get to that out and back. They are heading west now towards, away from the downtown core. There is a hill on the return, like we mentioned, but they can enjoy a little bit of extra speed here on that downhill. So with these elites, they're able to control the downhill, you know, not pump on the brakes and not let their legs cruise too much. So, you know, they'd be well practiced in this point, but it would give them maybe a bit of extra confidence, but at the same time, they're so well trained that they're not going to look down at their watches and know that this is maybe the sustainable pace for the whole race.
Yeah, it's at the War Museum that the hill really bottoms out. It rolls ever so slightly to Tunney's pasture along the parkway, and once they get to Tunney's, and you'll see a bunch of office buildings there, that's where it gets pan flat, and the 5K mark is at Tunney's pasture where the runners will get their first bottle.
Yeah, there's some nutrition there. I think there's a couple extra amenities for athletes at that point, and you'll also see a surge of crowd of people and spectators that are coming in from the west end. Lots of parking around there for spectators. I'm not sure if our LRT is running this morning, but if so, there's a LRT line where you can hop off and see these athletes run through. So if they're looking for anybody in this area, you're not getting as many spectators. And, you know, we mentioned this yesterday that it's a rainy, cool morning here in the city. So, but it doesn't look too bad out there.
Yeah, while
it's
it's wet, it's not as rainy as expected. Granted, we're 7.5 minutes into this thing. 2:53 for the second K on the men's side. The women at 6:58 through 2K.
Yeah, we'll see the pace shift as the terrain starts to adjust here, and they're just passing that War Museum and Jewish Memorial. So as they're going south here onto the parkway, they're going to cruise here for a little while before getting into Tunney's pasture and doing a little bit of turning. There is a sharp turnaround and then a nice longer stretch where they can settle in. But again, there are quite a few turns in this race, especially this year. There's a lot of loops and out and backs and overpasses, so it at least keeps things mentally interesting.
Yeah, we have 3 pacers out front right now, so that's really advantageous to the group behind. 1 pacer's nice to set the pace, but 3 pacers, typically the pace will be a little bit more even, and they almost just create a wall, right? So you see all the rest of the top men just tucked in behind there. So they hopefully, like they've just, like I kind of said before, they just turn their brains off, follow the pacers. The pace will undulate a little bit with the undulation of the course, obviously, but the aim is the effort to be quite consistent over every kilometer.
The leader now, Shura Kitata, the 29-year-old from Ethiopia, is a world ranking of number 75. Kitata told us the other day, look, I'm fully confident coming into this thing with no injuries. Kitata in February ran 2:03:59 in Sevilla, Spain. He says, that's my favorite course in the world.
Typically, where you run your fastest times are your favorite courses. Mine changed a few times over my career. But yeah, interesting story with Shura Kitata. So he actually ran this race in 2016 as a 20-year-old. He finished second here. The course is a bit different, 10 years on from here, but he's had success on this course. He's also battled Kipchoge a few times. So in 2018, one race he was second to Kipchoge. And then, interestingly enough, in 2020, in the pandemic London Marathon, he won that version of the London Marathon, and that was the first loss that Kipchoge had since Kipchoge's second marathon, where he finished second to, don't hold it against him, but the world record at the time, Wilson Kipsang. So Kipchoge had a flawless record from that one loss until 2020, and it was Shura Katada who was the winner that day. So he's had a really big career, lots of fast times, big performances, second place at New York City Marathon, and yet his PB only came earlier this year at Seville. So he's on top of his game, and he's going to be a tough competitor today.
Mm-hmm. It looks like that second pack, there's a second and third pack divided up here.
Yeah, and that's the women's lead pack there.
Yeah.
So also they have a bunch of pacers there. That's Felix in the white. He's a well-known pacer from Kenya. He does a great job. He'll likely go quite far with the women, potentially to about 40K. Whereas you'll see the men's pacers drop off. Probably if they go far, they'll go within 30K. So the women will have their pacers a bit longer.
So we talk about world records and we talk about the marathon. Let's go back all of a month ago overseas in London, where not one, but two runners broke the 2-hour mark in the marathon, of course, led by the Kenyan Sebastian Sawe, who clocked 1:59:30. And so much has been made in the aftermath of that about the shoe technology and how much that plays into it. There have been stories in the Wall Street Journal about the nutrition, and all that has been adjusted and modified as part of this run. But for two runners to go under 2 hours, led by Sawe at 1:59:30, Jenna, I'll start with you. When you heard that, your reaction?
I was incredible. I they're the joke going that the second place person beat sub 2 and still came in second.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible. I don't know if I'd see it in this decade, because it was such a monumental feat. But then to exceed sub 2 so dramatically is incredible, and it is really interesting, the realm of technology. But then you read about the nutrition he had before, the 2 pieces of bread and honey and tea. I think that was the pre-morning routine, and that is the most basic, most classic thing you could possibly have. So it's this dichotomy of training and performance and nutrition and metrics and shoes, but then also just doing the thing that works and going classic, sticking with tried and true things like bread and honey. So I think it's a really interesting field. There's going to be a lot more discussion and evaluation of continuing to push that threshold, especially getting the women closer and closer to that number as well.
Yeah, so when I saw the sub 2, it was pretty mind-blowing. And then I heard about the weight of the new shoes, and I was like, okay, that is significant. So now the weight of the new Adidas Super Shoe is half of that of the other shoes. Like if you look at Rory right now, he's in the Puma, which was, highly regarded as one of the fastest shoes in the world up until London, and with a couple other companies. And then Adidas came out with a shoe that was under 100 grams.
Yeah, and just for context, a men's size 9 of this Adidas Super Shoe, 3.4 ounces in weight.
It's crazy.
And the analogy that the Wall Street Journal made, like the comp is, it's less than a bar of soap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're super, and apparently a couple people have been given the boxes of shoes, and when they get the box, they don't even believe they have to open them up to actually believe that
there's
they're
something
actually
in there.
Like
I'm not getting ripped off here.
Yeah, the weight isn't significant versus a shoe box, right? So it has changed the game. I mean, Super Shoes changed the game in 2016. They were widely available in 2018, and then we just saw the time. All the times came down, 2-3 minutes. If you just look at world rankings and where say if you're ranked 100th in the world, where does that rank now with super shoes? It's about a 3-minute difference. And I think now with how light the new shoes are, we might be looking at about a 3.5-minute difference versus what people were doing just over 10 years ago. So a significant shift. Just as with Nike made that first super shoe and all the rest of the companies caught up, we're probably going to see the rest of the companies catch up to the weight of the Adidas shoe as well.
Well, Solway won back-to-back. He won London last year, 2:02.27. Then he wins London this year at 1:59.30. There's your 3-minute difference right there.
Yeah, I think the conditions were a little bit better this year as well, so that has something to do. We saw very fast times in Boston this year, and that has a lot to do with the conditions. So Rory actually Rory was 6th last year in Boston. Rory ran faster this year and finished 14th.
Yeah.
Right, and that's just because the conditions were so favorable. And we saw that again with London. So London's not necessarily a point-to-point course, but you do start and finish at 2 different areas. And they did have a nice tailwind at the end, and that's where you want it, right? When you start really laboring and the race is getting really hard. If you have a tailwind in that period, it can be advantageous. And so both Boston and London did have nice weather.
I mean, not far off from what we're experiencing today, which is, in part observing the weather all week. I was a little bit excited because the weather in London and Boston were not, cool. I looked at it and went, ugh. But for these runners, it's not far off. So I was excited for today to see if we could get some of those similar times. I mean, not a sub-2, probably, but seeing if we could get some course records even, or some big surges with this cooler, unseasonal weather for this event specifically.
I want to get into the nutrition side before we get back into this race. By the way, you saw the water bottles. That's the 5K mark at Tunney's. The War Museum's about 2.5 kilometers away. The men just at the 5K mark, 15:03 total. That last kilometer went at 3 minutes and 1 second. The nutrition has changed so much. So Jim Miller is the chief of sports performance for USA Cycling. And he told the reporter, look, it's about eating your way through an event. That was the quote from Miller. He said, you just got to keep fueling the machine. Today, some sports docs feel that elite athletes need to consume twice as many carbs as was suggested just a few years ago. What do we think of this?
Yeah, that's completely true. So when I was in the peak of my career, most of the runners were trying to take about 50 to 60 grams of carbs an hour. And with the products that they have now, they're a bit easier to take in more carbs, and we know now that some of these athletes will try to go to 120 grams of carbs an hour. But that is the very high end. But I would say most of these athletes will be aiming between 90 and 100. And if you think of people doing 10 years ago, 50, it is double. And I would say before you would see a few more people bonking, or at least just like falling off their pace. And a lot of that was nutrition. A lot of that was your legs were feeling like crap because you didn't have super shoes. So now with both technologies just advancing, you can't isolate one from the other. But when you hit them both right, you're seeing better performances across the board.
So Solway's run, we just saw the runners at the 5K mark get their water. This is how it went down in London. He took in 25 grams of carbs at the start of the race, then 25 grams every 5 kilometers. He had a caffeine gel at the 20-kilometer mark, and in total he consumed 230 grams of carbs in 1 hour 59:30.
Yeah, you got to think of these guys like machines.
Yeah.
They need the fuel. They need the lubrication. They need to be able to do that. The average runner, probably not. But these guys, this is their sport. This is their career. So to be so on top of things and fueling consistently, getting ahead of those, like Reed said, if you have a history of bonking, or if the weather is warm, or you were maybe on a flight and you had some cramping, getting ahead of any of those things by making sure you're fueling adequately and replenishing your glycogen stores is so important. And these guys do have it down to a science. They have a team of people to tell them exactly what to do. And the water bottle stations are here. You know, the water now has carbohydrates in the drink mixes. So it's so well organized, and it's so methodical and meticulous the way they approach these events and grab their water and the order of the water. It's like this beautiful dance to keep them healthy and strong, so that we can see the best performance from, you know, the world's best runners.
And so often there was talk, hey, people are going to get sick. You don't want to do this. It was interesting. Sawe in his camp in Kenya, you know, they're simulating competitive environments and everything that they do, but they also made sure that the feedings were part of it to prepare his stomach. They actually called it gut training, just to make sure that when the lights come on, the body's going to respond.
Yeah, and I tell my athletes this all the time, and a lot of this information that I get is actually from Natasha Wodak's coach, Trent Stellingwerf, who is the expert in sports nutrition in Canada. And you, just like you know, with running, you know, training to get faster, you can train your gut to upload more of these carbs per hour. So, you know, if you're struggling at 60 grams of carbs an hour, yeah, gut train. You know, in training, try to push that to 75, 80. You know, if 90 is feeling a bit uncomfortable, then maybe on race day you back off a little bit, because you know you're going to be trying a little bit harder on race day. With your nerves and just more blood going to your working muscles, mainly your legs. Your stomach's gonna have a bit more problems. So yeah, there's a little bit of like, you know, there's a lot of science, but there's also just feeling it out, right? Like what does it feel like to take in, you know, a gel every 15 or 20 minutes, and do you like the taste of it? There's like a lot that goes into, you know, how much you're gonna be able to consume on race day.
Yeah, and none of these guys are trying this for the first day or first time today. They've practiced it. It's tried and true. And you know, Reed just said he provides the same advice to his athletes, and I would do the same to mine. It's, you know, we're not going out for steak dinners the night before and crushing something new in the morning or having the hotel breakfast necessarily. These athletes are prepared. They've tried this in their simulations and their training runs. Absolutely, gut training is something that could be mimicked, and especially the athletes traveling. Coming to foods and a climate and environment and different bacteria, they are able to toughen up not only the soles of their feet, but their tummies as well, so that they can get through these races and not have any problems.
You see the pacers are often pointing out, you know, little potholes. They're a lot of times you can see them, you know, running around the puddles. Because it's not raining hard right now, you can stay relatively dry, but if your feet get wet, you're a little bit more worried about blisters, so they will avoid puddles if they can, and the pacers doing a great job here of letting the runners know what's coming up. You know, whether it's the water bottle stations, they'll, you know, point those to the right-hand side, or anything else the runners might encounter.
Ironically, this road here was recently paved. It doesn't look like it, but that's what you get on Canadian soil with our really harsh winters, is cracks and potholes. And something maybe new, if you are racing in the States or in warm climates with really nice roads, it's different coming to Canada. It is a little bit more arduous. I'm not going to say pavement is at all like a trail, but it's going to be closer to it in terms of keeping your eyes on the ground so that you don't trip, fall, stumble, and avoid those cracks and creases.
All right, now we're going to look at the lead Canadian. So that's Natasha Wodak being paced by Rob Briette, Andrew Alexander, and Alex Sear. So
Natasha just gave us a wave.
Yeah, and she is running with Jess Hansen from the United States. So she was another athlete who is looking to get on that 2:28 pace, accompanied by a couple of other elite men. Also happy to have pacers going at their pace, but these guys are doing a great job of protecting Natasha and Jess from the win. Like, Natasha's giving thumbs up. She's feeling good. Maybe she's trying to tell you know, her friends, family, coach that all is well right now. 24 minutes into the race.
Yeah, she said her goal is 2:28 coming into this in Ottawa. She said a year ago it probably would have been 2:26, but you know, at the stage of her career, that has evolved. It's been a good training block for Wodak. At the beginning, She strained her quad, took only 3 days off. After that, wasn't the ideal way to get things going, but from there, a consistent, constant build. And, you know, I asked Wodak yesterday, I said, you know, at this stage of your career, 11 marathons in, what motivates you? And she was very clear. She said, look, one, this is my passion. Two, this is my career. She said, I'm on a 4-year contract with ASICS. What a dream that I get to do this for a living. She said, I'm still training at a very high level. I'm on track to make Canada for the Team Canada for the half marathon in Copenhagen this year. It's something that still matters so much for Wodak, the Canadian Olympian, who continues to deliver at this stage of her life and at this stage of her running career.
Yeah, she's been running really well. She just did, at the BMO Vancouver half, ran the course record in 1:12:01. Maybe she would have liked to kick in for that 1:11:59, but she was really happy, smiling, waving when she finished. And I think that's when she does well, when she's happy and she's really enjoying this. And I think too, going into this race, you know, what's a 2:26 or 2:28 going to give her now versus potentially trying to qualify for the next Olympics when that Olympic window opens up? So maybe she's looking for a solid performance today and one that she can bounce back quickly if she has her eyes on that World Road Running Championships in September.
She looks comfortable. She looks relaxed. I can't see any, I mean, we're early days still, but she looks very comfortable. And I think that thumbs up is a great sign early on.
Yeah, Wodak ran her first marathon in Toronto in 2013. Didn't run another one for 7 years. Was so dedicated to the 10,000 meters on the track. And, you know, the marathon just didn't seem to fit in. Then when the pandemic hit, there wasn't much to do. And then that December, she said, all right, let's give this a shot. And ran the Olympic standard in her second career marathon.
You know, I don't want to give the pandemic any credit, but it seems to have lent us some really great athletes.
Yes.
It's resulted in some really strong female athletes, and you know, some of our winner yesterday for our women's 10K, and Natasha Wodak coming back strong after that hiatus. So. Yeah, we'll give credit where credit is due there. So thank you for that.
Thank you, COVID.
Thank you, COVID, for that one thing. But I mean, that makes sense. I think it's great. I think the marathon field is such an interesting field and such a different beast than the 10,000 meters. So it's great to see her taking that lead. And she has, like, similar to Linkletter, she is that household name that graces, you know, the covers of our magazines and our Canadian running news. So it's nice to have her here in the city, continuing to, you know, crush Canadian athletics.
On the men's side, they have passed the War Museum. The women's pack is about to approach it. The men ran the 9K at 2:59 on that pace. Now the lead men are crossing the Chaudière Bridge into Gatineau. It is a relatively flat bridge, and then it's 7 kilometers over on the Quebec side.
It's actually a really beautiful bridge, and I know they're not looking around here, but when I'm running with our runners, sometimes we stop and we take in the falls and some of the beautiful architecture. This area of town is actually being redeveloped right now for more of a community feel, more of an urban gathering center. Not quite ready yet. And I know the athletes aren't noticing that right now, but in the future, this will be a really nice spot for people to come gather and watch our athletes. But we are moving into a side of the city that is going to be a little bit quieter, so if any athletes are maybe battling with some demons inside based on the pace, based on how they're feeling, this is where it's going to get quiet, and they continue to make it their race before coming back into the city with surges of energy and a little bit more of a difficult time as they get into Rockcliffe Park.
Yeah, so these lead women have been set on a 2:20 pace.
Okay.
My guess is that they're not all going to make it. There are some very strong athletes in here, but a lot of them are sort of athletes that will probably run 2:23 to 2:26. So our lead athlete here would be Mesut Balete. So she actually has a 2:18 PB, and she has some really great results. The interesting result that I think is that when Natasha ran her Canadian record in Berlin, of 2:23.12. Meseret Belete was actually 2 seconds behind her. So they were like back to back at that Berlin race, which is pretty interesting. But since then, Belete has gone on to run 2:18 in 2023. But that 2022 Berlin is a pretty close battle between Wodak and Belete. And even last year, Belete did run a 1:09 half marathon. So she's still very fast, and I would say at this pace, at 2:20, she's probably the most comfortable. And we're going to probably see some carnage, as well as a lot of really good results come from this fast pace.
There's Natasha Wodak in the middle, Jess Hansen, the American, to her left.
Yeah, and the plan here is with 3 pacers for these 2 women. If Natasha and Jess do separate, the pacers will also separate as well. So if one of them falls off or one of them goes ahead, they will have one of those pacers will go with the other athlete. So that's really assuring that they'll have company if they don't stick together.
The men are at the 10K mark. You just saw them there. They concluded the first hill of real substance. That's in Quebec. It's about 100 meters at 8% on Rue Alexandre Taché. So they just got through that. They get their second bottle of the morning. And Rory Linkletter's right there in the middle of it. The last 2 to 3 kilometers in Gatineau, and there's still a couple of clicks from reaching there, it rolls slightly downhill. So that's what's happening on the men's side as they run through, Jenna, the streets of Quebec.
Yeah, and you can see to the left, just behind Rory there on the screen, there's a pile of water. And this was what the athletes were warned about yesterday, was that the infrastructure in Quebec is a little less maintained than Ottawa, and it's just different municipalities, so we're not on the same maintenance schedule. So the athletes have been warned to look around, make sure that the puddles of water are not, in fact, potholes. We don't want an athlete stepping in and twisting their ankle, so it's just something to be aware of and unique with a rainy day. So you see another turn there. You're going to get a lot of these coming up where they're going in and out and around, and you're going to see that undulation. Again, this would be a wonderful area to cool down if there was a lot of sun because of the tall buildings and the narrower streets. But we're not getting that today. It does block a little bit of wind in this area, so if there is any headwind or tailwind, the athletes are going to get a little bit more mild conditions at this point, where they can, again, tune in, focus on their own race. And you can see, again, on the corners there, they're not hugging the sidewalks too hard. Probably a good idea, just because of those potholes, staying nice and safe. And it's good that the pacers are avoiding them to keeping their men on track.
So they went through 10K in 30:19, which puts them on a 2:07 pace right now, so 2:07 finishing time. And it's really interesting, they've been averaging 3:02 per kilometer. If you average 3 flat per kilometer, only 2 seconds quicker, you're going to be running 2:06 mid. 1 second per kilometer is obviously 42 seconds. So, these little changes of pace really add up in the marathon. So that it's a big job on the pacers to get it right. And if they can just up that pace a little bit in the second half, they are looking at a course record type performance.
Well, you talk about 2:06. It was in Boston this year that Rory Linkletter ran 2:06.04. Good for 14th at the Boston Marathon. And I asked him about it the other day, and his response was really disappointing. Linkletter's point was this. He said, I was in the best shape of my life. I felt there was so much meat on the bone. He felt he made execution mistakes from an emotional maturity standpoint. He said, I had misplaced energy because of all the excitement I had about Boston, how fit I was, and a real learning experience for him. But isn't it incredible that you run 2:06.04, you finish in the top 15, the fastest time ever by a Canadian at a showcase race like Boston, and Linkletter realizes oh man, there's so much growth ahead of me, so much to learn from that.
I mean, I was on my feet watching him. I thought he did a great job, but we can't discount how an athlete feels about their own performance. They know themselves best. As a spectator, I think he did outstanding. And that field, like Reed mentioned, was incredible. You know, he had an all-time best, but we also had course records, and we had incredible conditions, and everything was in their favor. So I selfishly would love to tell him, you know, you did amazing. You know, everybody else thinks so except for yourself, but you can't discount how you feel, you know. And I think I think that kind of mindset and mentality is a force to be reckoned with, and that leads him to this race, which is something that he knows he could win, which is awesome. And only time will tell in the next hour and a half.
Yeah, he'll just have to remain very patient. Just like you said, Arash, he may have learned like some important lessons about energy distribution and just sort of chilling out during the marathon. And it kind of looks like you know, that's what he's doing. He's not sticking his nose up in the front, having to be right there. These guys are only half a second ahead of him, and they've just been that half a second the whole time. And he's getting protection from the wind. If you're actually dangling off the back like that, you pick your line. If you're three abreast and you're making a left-hand turn and you're on the right-hand side, you don't get to make the shortest distance.
Sure.
You have to run that corner wide. Rory at the back right now, he can run the tangent on all these corners and pick the best lines. So yeah, he's doing a great job just conserving energy. The name of the game right now is patience. You have to be patient, patient, patient. If you start worrying about how the other runners are feeling, you know, what's going to happen, you know, really trying to like, you know, make any sort of like changes this early in the race, you're just wasting energy. And Rory now, you know, he's a seasoned vet, and which makes sense. He was racing when I was racing, so you know he's been around for a while now. He was, when I was sort of towards the end of my career, he was the rookie, and I remember him making some rookie mistakes in races, watching him kind of run solo and not in the pack, and yeah, he's learned and he's an expert at his craft now.
And he's right there in the mix. Rory Linkletter, the Canadian who finished second overall last year. The runners at the 10-kilometer mark. The last 2 to 3 kilometers in Gatineau rolls slightly downhill. I just want to kind of tie the pin on this Boston story, because one of the things that Linkletter said, he said, I'd never been that excited, and I let it be bigger than it needed to be. And it's interesting, here you have an athlete who's 29 years old, who's performed so well, but even he understood that about himself, and I think that's really going to help him down the road.
Yeah, you really need to, you know, they always say, don't let the highs get too high and the lows get too low.
Right.
And, you know, a marathon's 42 kilometers. You need to be in the right headspace, and you need to find that balance. And it's easy to get carried away before races with the interviews, with all the media on you. You can lose energy in the days before, as you know, especially if you know are used to just hunkering up in Flagstaff with your family and sort of just going about your business. I know, you know, Rory's got a podcast. He's out there. He is a talker. So maybe all these interviews don't affect him as much as other people, but it really is a thing of just, you know, going into a race with a lot of hype and just going about your own business in the days before and just preparing mentally.
You know, and I think he took debut marathoner John Gay under his wing. And
Sure did.
John is out there holding his own Canadian formal steeplechase Olympian. And John is, speaking of podcasts, also hosts a podcast at the Shakeout. And I think that, oh, there he goes. I think that also probably brings some purpose, because he took him under his wing, brought him out to train, and is making his debut here. So it's a little bit of like a mentorship, leadership element. And so I think that probably has more meaning for him as well.
So this is really interesting. The Pacers obviously gapped the pack, and Rory took it upon himself to just tuck right up into the Pacers. He saw room there, versus before everyone was kind of tucked up behind him. So he bridged that gap. It looks like the rest of them are coming back now. So it's interesting to see that already, only 40 minutes into this marathon, we're seeing some strategy and some tactics play out. Usually in the first half of a marathon, everything goes according to plan, and it's the second half where things don't go according to plan, and it's mitigating, how you're feeling and deciding to make a move or not make a move. Did somebody, go out too fast and roll them up slowly? But yeah, we're already seeing some stuff, and that's probably because of the hills that we saw. If a hill looks a little steep on TV, it's very steep in real life. And, we saw a hill just a little while ago that is, I think, was the culprit of pulling that pack apart a little bit. And maybe the Pacers are very much, okay, let's stay on pace, because they know that's why they're getting paid, and sometimes that means they might actually push a little bit hard on the uphills to quote unquote stay on pace. They perhaps are actually running a bit slower. That split that we did see was different from the information that we got. It said they went through 10K in about 30-40, so that would actually put them on 209 pace. So we'll see what happens in the next few K, but I don't know. Are they running 207 pace, 209 pace? Maybe we'll know more at the 15K mark.
Yeah, and it just looks like they're just wrapping up that Quebec side shortly, and they do get another uphill going over that Alexandria Bridge back towards the city, and that will remain uphill for a little while. It is a long uphill, not incredibly steep, but enough that it's going to take the legs out for a little bit. They get a little bit of a reprieve going into Rockcliffe, going by the Governor General's home, but at the same time, and this is where Linkletter has that advantage, is he knows what's coming up. So he made his move intentionally, knowing maybe the hills are going to play out into his favor.
Yeah, Linkletter said, look, I know the spots where it feels hard. He said Gatineau early, and then Rockcliffe, which is coming up, in a few kilometers or so. I asked him, why is that the hardest part? He said, it's quiet, it's rolling, there's not a lot to keep you engaged. He's somebody who really feeds off the atmosphere. But again, he said, I'm not going to think about racing until the canal. He really senses at the 32K mark, there's a 180 opportunity, then 4 kilometers over the crossover at the canal. Those are some spots he can also make a move. So a lot of race left here, but at this stage, coming up on the 43-minute mark, it's Rory Linkletter of Canada who is leading this Tamarack Homes Ottawa Marathon.
Yeah, we just saw the lead women 10K splits there. So it's 34 minutes for 10K. That puts them on 2:23 pace right now. So not as fast as what the Pacers were originally planned out to do. Perhaps it's a little windy out there today, and it's slowing things down a little bit. But obviously 2:23 is still a very fast pace. One interesting thing that I just saw from that 10K split was the name Abebe Aragawi. And if you're a fan of the sport and you have a bit of a memory and you're wondering, is that the same Abebe Aragawi from Sweden, who was the Olympic silver medalist in 2012 at 1500 and the 2013 world champion at the 1500 meters with a PB of 3:56? Yes, it is.
I don't think many other people have the same name.
Yeah, although I'll tell you, Bebe and Aragawi are both popular names in Ethiopia, but from Sweden.
Yeah.
Obviously Ethiopian descent, living and competing for Sweden. But that is an interesting story because she really didn't have any results for about 9 years, and then has run a 1:11 half this year. So basically from 2015 to 2024, and she started running some 5Ks again. She didn't have any, I don't see any results on the World Athletics page. So that is a really interesting name to see, and it's really cool that she's making her marathon debut here in Ottawa.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story. Thanks for sharing that, Reed. There's our women coming through Quebec.
Natasha Wodak on the right, Jessica Hansen on the left. In front, the Pacers on the far right is Andrew Alexander, who won the National 10K road race yesterday.
Yeah, and Alex Sear was 7th in 29:21, so about a minute behind the leader there. But Alex, I'm pretty sure that's a PB himself, and then Rob Briette is the other pacer who he was just watching last night, so he might be a bit fresher than the other two. But
Yeah.
Well, also a spectator yesterday was Natasha Wodak, who you see right there on the right-hand side of your screen. She said, look, I want to go watch. I coach some of the athletes. It gets me pumped up. And she said, sometimes it's better just to be out than stuck in the hotel room being nervous. And it's amazing that at this stage of her career, Wodak still feels the nerves before going out to compete.
Yeah. I don't know if it ever goes away completely. I think you just get different skills to manage it. You know, I think nerves are a good thing. I tell all my athletes, if you're nervous, it means you care.
Right.
So I think that's great. I think that her being part of the community, and it does get you excited. And I know the community would love to see her. I'm sure she got stopped and chatted with here and there. But yeah, I think that helps out. The bubbles definitely help.
according to Andrew Alexander's face, they don't help. It looked like he was wincing. He
Yeah.
probably didn't want to get soap in the eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was for context too, actually, Reed, at the end of the marathon last year, I don't know if you remember, there was some confetti cannons that went on in front of the elite athletes, and there has been a lot of rules and information shared with the spectators this year. To be
Okay.
mindful of not putting things in people's face, confetti or stepping onto the course. So hopefully we'll see that adherence at the end. You're exactly right. The bubbles in the eyes are probably not favorable at this point. But I hope that our spectators, especially at the end, can be mindful of clearing the path and making sure they're not stepping in. We get excited, but it is important that we keep those roads clear and not distract or influence the safety of the athletes.
Oh, there we go, going over another bridge. So I guess that means they're coming back into Ottawa. Is that right, Jenna?
Yeah, this is actually my favorite bridge. My favorite part of any run in the city is crossing from Quebec back to Ottawa. The views, you can't really see it from this perspective, but they are outstanding. You get to see Quebec on the one side in the river, and then you get to see Parliament Hill just ahead. It is an incredible view. It is a little bit uphill here. To the left and right is a car passing bridge, and then there is a pedestrian walkway, a wooden pedestrian walkway, so you can see pedestrians on the side here. So it's a multi-purpose bridge. It is a wonderful, wonderful part of this course. I think it is outstanding. Very narrow though. So for the elites, they have lots of space. For the general population, it is elbows to elbows, like running through a nightclub. But it is a little bit uphill, so they are going uphill now. They're going to be turning left towards our National Gallery. You can see our Museum of History in the back. And this will remain uphill probably for about another kilometer until they settle in. They've got a couple ups and downs and undulations, but then they start that climb up towards Rockcliffe.
Yeah, it's the hardest kilometer of the entire course, that 15 to 16K. They cross the Alexandra Bridge. Jenna, as you just talked about, coming back into Ottawa, and it's a 100-meter climb up the bridge. Then it's a 250-meter climb at about 4 to 5%, with a 600-meter flat section in between. So that's a real challenging part. And Rory Linkletter is still in the pack here, although he's dropped just a little bit. And now Sussex Drive. Not pan flat, a little rolling, and here they are. The runners, the lead runners on the men's side are out of Quebec and back into Ontario.
We're passing Coecky Point, which is a new landmark in the city, just recently developed, and this is where the artery and the intersection of the half marathon athletes and the full marathon athletes will intersect later on in the race, once the half marathon starts in about an hour and 10 minutes. So they typically, at the end of this race, when these fellas come back in towards the center of the city, you're going to see a lot of folks in that center section cheering for them and being excited. So bit sparser this morning because of the weather. It's also really early, so we're not seeing people out quite yet. But later on, as the morning progresses, you'll see this whole section feet deep of people. So there will be lots of crowds here, and then we'll start to see the folks in Rockcliffe come out of their homes with their coffees, potentially offering some extra hoses and snacks for athletes as they cross into Rockcliffe.
The forecast may have scared
The
some
forecast
people
may
off
have.
too.
Yeah. When you're coming out of your house in a house coat, though, it might not be so bad in the Rockcliffe area, but in this area,
That
it would
may
take
scare
a
some
little.
people off too.
Yeah, maybe. But this is also where the athletes are going to be running by the homes of our government officials. So we've got the Governor General's residence, newly appointed Governor General, as well as our Prime Minister. I wouldn't be surprised to see him out if he's in town, as well as some of our other local MPs and politicians tend to hover around this area with their security detail or coming out of their homes. So it's nice to see that representation, especially our Canadian athletes might recognize our leaders. And you know, Ottawa is like it's our capital city, but it's like a small town. We know each other. Our politicians are accessible. Our local celebrities are accessible. So this is where we're going to see those individuals crop up if they're going to make it out, and if they're not afraid of the rain.
Well, you mentioned it. It was a year ago that as the athletes were running, there was a very interesting fan who was paying close attention to what was happening. This was Albert Carrier running along. Again, this is a year ago. And who's a spectator who wanted an up-close look? There's Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, last spring with a wave. Only in Canada. Leader of the country is out to watch the Tamarack, Ottawa Marathon. Back to live pictures here. We'd be remiss if we did not discuss the situation with Albert Carrier, who won this event last year. Again, Rory Linkletter finished second, crossed the finish line second. And yes, Albert won the race, but Linkletter said, you know, it really ticks me off because in the aftermath of this Ottawa Marathon, the weeks and months that followed, Carrier tested positive for in out-of-event testing. Obviously, a suspension followed. Linkletter's point was, this is the first time it really impacted me. There were financial and other opportunities that would have come off of that had I won Ottawa. My career-long goal was to win a race like that. And then to see Albert win it, that takes it away from me and then test positive. I mean, that's a huge opportunity lost for the Canadian.
Yeah, it's always a bummer when someone tests positive after the fact and then you get, you don't get the gold medal the day of. And in fact, with the Ottawa Marathon, because Albert tested positive afterwards and before New York City, only his New York City result got disqualified. His Ottawa result still stands. And, if you think about it, Albert Carrier, he wins Ottawa, great time. I very doubt that all of a sudden he's decided to dope after that. So, where there's smoke, there's fire. And he was probably cheating in Ottawa, but as it stands, he's still the winner from last year.
This was the quote from Rory Linkletter. Quote, "If you did it once, how are we to believe it didn't happen before?"
Of course, yeah. And I would completely agree with Rory there. He got robbed, it's no, I see cheating as no different than had Albert Carrier cut the course short, right? He didn't play by the same rules as the rest of the competitors. I'm glad he got caught, but I wish he had been caught before Ottawa. And yeah, if anything positive to come out of it, maybe that's just given Rory a little bit more fire. I know when I've been beaten by drug cheats, it has given me more fire to beat them, or revenge is sort of a race that should have been his. So if anything, hopefully Rory's just more fired up and has a little bit more fuel for today.
I know that the Run Ottawa directors definitely had pressure to address the situation and did immediately after, and did the testing protocols as per usual, pre and post race for athletes. And this year that has been a dominant theme for our elite athletes as an elite label race too. In the event of attracting some of the best athletes in the world, the doping monitoring is definitely something that the organizers are keeping a pulse on and making sure athletes are well aware that as soon as that finish line is done, that doping control is going to be available.
And there's two pieces to this, because every medalist will be drug tested after this race. There's also random athletes who will be drug tested after this. In career situation, yes, he passed the testing here, but it was out of competition testing that actually nabbed him. So it's not just what you do the day of competition, the week of competition. You may get a knock on the door, and for all of these athletes, they, especially the Canadian athletes, and it's different country to country, your whereabouts are vital, that you need to let the doping system know exactly where you're going to be at all times, because you could get a knock on the door at any time out of competition where they're going to come in and look for a sample.
Yeah, so you actually have a 1 hour window every day where you need to be where you say you're going to be.
Yeah.
And that can be at your own house, that can be at your training site, but for 1 hour a day you better be there. And if the doping officials come during that 1 hour, you have to be there. They can come to your house at other times during the day, but if it's not in that 1 hour and you're not there, it doesn't count as a penalty. But yeah, that 1 hour is very important. So if you're an athlete, you typically have a schedule of where you're going to be, and that's typically where they will nab the cheats. You rarely find people testing positive at events, right? You're going to get drug tested at any big marathon. It's in the weeks and months before that where I guess they're rolling the dice and hoping they're not taking their substances and getting tested in that small window.
So Linkletter crossed the finish line second last year, and he said that run in May here in Ottawa was the biggest jump for him mentally in feeling like he belonged with the best. And that's such an important part of this as you become a competitor, that you really have the sense of, hey, I can hang with the best in the world.
Yeah, and I think that, he felt that way, and I think that we saw that too. Rory went from being part of the pack to being the lead of the pack and maintaining that. And he has since, with his performance in Boston and him returning to Ottawa. In my mind and the eyes of my peers, that he is a front runner and he's a heavy hitter now in the international and Canadian running scene. And I do genuinely believe that Ottawa race was that step forward for him. And you can see too, as the women pass through the downtown area here, the Pacers encouraging the fans. I don't know if you saw that earlier.
We're looking for some noise.
Looking for some noise. So it is definitely a quieter morning here in the city with the weather. We had a really long, tough winter. So any adverse conditions, I think our population is a little bit tired having to face it. So a little quieter out there, but the Pacers are doing a great job smiling there and encouraging the crowd to be involved to get these two ladies through.
And a little dialogue between Wodak and the Pacers there.
Yeah, it's great. It's a casual Sunday group run. Looks like they're having a good time. Natasha giving us a little smile there, so she still looks super comfortable as she passes the Japan embassy there.
Yeah, so far so good. Business as usual for these two ladies. First hour in the marathon is just about saving your energy and getting ready for the pain that's about to ensue.
Yeah. And they are well approaching that tough part where you see the men here. They're climbing up to that lookout point. That will be on their left. Again, I know they're not looking around here, but it is a beautiful, beautiful area of the city. Nice, fresh, clean air too. Lots of nature, lots of grass, lots of trees. This is, that lookout point, they just passed it. So this is a decent climb. You know, we have our athletes, we have a ton of cycling opportunities in the city, and this tends to be a popular route where you need to gear down on your bike to get up this section, and these athletes are running up it. So it just goes to show, like Reed said, if it looks like it's a hill, it definitely is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real hill of substance. We're at about the 20K mark with the lead men. It's as east as you're going to get on the course. It's on Acacia Road. There's actually going to also be a bunch of potholes for about a 200-meter stretch along the way here that the runners want to be looking out for.
Yeah, and in this section too, you're going to see a lot of turns. So there are a lot of weaving in and out as they go through the more formal parts of Rockcliffe, near the Governor General's residence as well. So this is a good place to be advantageous if you are a more technical runner, if you enjoy the diversity of not a point-to-point course. I'm a runner who enjoys a lot of weaving for my brain. I enjoy a change of scenery, but not all athletes are the same. So if that is your strength and you enjoy the weaving in and out, this will be an enjoyable course for you. And also to play with the gears on the legs, to see how the legs are feeling. If you want to push it a little bit further on those hills, if you want to cruise on the downhills, save the legs. So this is an interesting part of the course where the strengths and weaknesses of the runners is going to come into play here.
Yeah, we just saw them grab bottles from the 20-kilometer bottle station. So those are filled up the day before with their own concoctions, carbohydrate, electrolyte mix. So that when I say the 20K station, it's not an exact right on 20K, but the bottle stations do appear every 5K. But sometimes they're put in slightly different spots because of just what's happening. Like you wouldn't want to put it necessarily on a turn like this, or maybe an uphill. This is the hill we saw last year, I think, where Albert Career really made a move on Rory, and you know, Rory's just hanging tough and trying to distribute his energy as evenly as possible. So you're seeing Rory come off the back a little bit. I think he's going to come right back onto that pack a few hundred meters after this hill. I think he's just playing it a little bit differently than everybody else. But
Rory was talking the other day. He said, this is it, how to respond in the Rockcliffe part of the course. He said, yeah, of course, that's where Albert took off on us. He said, I need to brace myself for this moment, and he hasn't fallen back too far from the pack here in that exact same spot.
yeah, it looks like he's actually already right back in there. So like that, as we were talking about before, the course experience does pay off, and Rory has it.
Yeah, and he would know, this is an undulating part of the course, and he's absolutely right that once he hits the canal in a couple kilometers time, he'll be able to settle in, and that's when the real race will start. That's when the conditions are going to feel the most natural and most familiar for most of the athletes. This is the unique part of Ottawa, is its scenery and its neighborhoods and demographics, and I think that's a strength for Rory here.
So we've talked a lot about Natasha Wodak. Flanked by her is Jessa Hansen out of Spicer, Minnesota. Hansen ran at Northern Arizona University, is based out of Flagstaff. Hansen, no stranger to the marathon, 27-year-old. Her career best was in Orlando just over 2 years ago, ran 2:31:02 there.
And that would have been the Olympic trials. It was in Orlando. I don't think she was running the Disney marathon running that fast.
High-fiving Darth Vader along the way.
Yeah.
And you guys can see on the screen too, for folks watching, that there are, this course is littered with volunteers. About 2,500 plus volunteers here this weekend. Shifts for those volunteers for the marathon starting as early as 6 a.m., lasting for hours. Age limit for the kids, 14 years old and plus. So we have kids throughout this course. We have volunteers from the city everywhere populating check-in and water bottles and kit pickup and hydration stations, medal distribution. These are incredible people. We want to take a shout out to the volunteers for being here on their Sunday mornings. And also to the spectators. I've given them a bit of flack for maybe sleeping in a bit today, being a little nervous about the rain, but I think the amount of spectators is probably not shown on screen too, but typically attracts around 200,000 spectators.
No kidding.
Yeah, so absolutely crazy. Huge amount of spectators, up to 40,000 out-of-town visitors into the city for the weekend on average for Ottawa Race Weekend. It is a massive global event from international athletes to local athletes, and we are grateful for everybody for coming to support us in our town, supporting our local economy, our small businesses, our athletes, our Olympians, our champions. So thank you to everybody for trusting this elite level race.
Well, I was chatting with Meseret Gebre de Cabo the other day, and that was one of the things that she talked about. Meseret said, look, I appreciate the organization of the race. She said everybody really enjoys this one, and she offered that appreciation, Jenna, to the volunteers and everybody behind it. It's one thing as for us to talk about that, but when the athletes themselves, the elite runners themselves point that out, it tells you just how significant this event is and has become.
Yeah, and I think Reed can attest to it. Reed mentioned your favorite race is the one you personal best at, but another factor is the hospitality you experience and the community and the warmth of the city. So I know some of my favorite events have been the ones where I've had, my hand held by the locals, and I've had a warm welcome and a pleasant experience, not only for personal best, but for the event itself. So I'm hoping that these athletes, leave Ottawa and have nothing but good things to say, maybe aside from the rain, but it is not 38 degrees today, so we can be grateful for that.
Yeah, so about 2.5 minutes ago, we saw the men go through the half marathon mark. So it's always significant. Wow, we just saw Peso just stop at the table looking for his bottle. That's interesting. But the half marathon mark always gives us a nice split. I don't have the exact split right now, but they're about on 2:07 something pace. So they're averaging about 3:02 per kilometer. Still a very fast time on this course. And with so many men still in contention, the prospect of actually ramping up that pace when the course goes flat along the canal, it could very well happen. So, they're maybe expected to. I think it might be more of like a 2:09 expected pace. Maybe they were 1:04.30 through halfway, or 1:04 low.
This is where they're starting to circle back towards the city center. They're going to be crossing through that Governor General's residence here, through Rockcliffe, not through the Governor General's, but around. And that's where we saw our Prime Minister there on the corner last year. It doesn't look like he made an appearance at the same spot. You never know, he could be out there somewhere. I'm not sure if he's traveling right now, but crossing that Governor General's residence there, our officials. Not as visible as last year, but they could be around. We don't know. We did have Mark Carney's wife, Dinah Fox Carney, who was competing in the 10K yesterday. So she was with her security detail and was spotted on the course and accomplished a really strong 10K.
Lead Canadian woman, Natasha Wodak, again there with Jessa Hansen. Wodak said, hey, I'm still here. Age 44, she said it's crazy. She said every year I feel like I only have one left, but here I am. She and Melindy Elmore, of course, are good friends, and Melindy's a year older, and so Wodak's point was, hey, if Melindy can do it, so can I. At this stage of things, Wodak is just taking her career year by year.
Yeah, interestingly enough, she is 10 years older than the next top elite. So,
Wild.
Yeah, Natasha's born in 1981. The next top elite's born in 1991 in this field. So if you're looking at sort of the top like 15 women, yeah, she's got a good decade on anyone else, which is a bit rare. There are a lot more women in their late 30s who are still running very fast, but they're just not necessarily here in Ottawa this weekend.
We mentioned it at the top of the show. Wodak's goal today is to run 2:28.
She still looks really comfortable there. Oh, there we go. There, the men are starting to come back into the city here on that stretch back in, passing through that aid station. A little narrow gap there, again, with the men having a smaller field. It's a little easier to get through, but this is going to be that return. Rory knowing that the flattest parts are coming up and where he gets to make that break and where the race really starts to begin for him around that 25-28K mark. And that's when we're going to see things get a little interesting. And then the elite men also now get to see the other pack of the general population runners coming through.
So there we go. That's the halfway split. It's 104.22, 208.44. My math is correct, doubling that time. So they're on 208.44 pace through halfway. The top, Peter and Jeru, Sagai, and Goitem there, the top three, those are your pacers that clock through the first three spots. And then you got Luke Kibet Chariot. I think they use three names because it's not to be confused with Luke Kibet, who is a former world champion at the marathon, and Isaac Kipkimboy. Those are the two right there, but on the screen. But of course, there's another five guys who are in that pack as well, including some. Ayana he's often one of the top runners in this pack, who's right up against the pacers, and he already ran a 206 as well this year. So just like Rory has run 206 already this year, so is Ayana. He's in the purple, kind of tucked in right behind the pacers, so running very well this year.
So as the lead men have kind of come out of Rockcliffe, that was the second highest point of elevation in the entire course. It does get a little more downhill from here. And we have news. Our spies have spotted the Prime Minister watching from outside of his residence. He's got the green jacket on. He's applauding the runners as they go by. So our TV cameras haven't spotted Prime Minister Carney.
We knew he'd be
But
out
we
there.
knew he'd be here if he's in the city, and
Yes,
he
he
is.
is.
We'll see him perhaps as other runners come by that area. So this is interesting. We obviously missed a big move because we don't see Jess Hansen running side by side with Natasha anymore. I'm not sure if she's slightly ahead or slightly behind, but that's a very steep hill. So one of them suffered on the hill, or one of them really powered up that hill. I did see someone behind, maybe Natasha has made a bit of a move here, and it looks like Alex Sear and Andrew Alexander have stayed with Natasha, and Rob Briette will be with Jess Hansen.
So we mentioned Hansen running that marathon as part of Olympic qualifying in Orlando in 2024. That was her first career marathon a couple of years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, if you're running your first marathon in the Olympic trials, that's pretty interesting. The U.S. Olympic trials is a big deal, right? It's a hyper competitive situation where the top three just automatically go to the Olympics. So a lot of pressure there. So here we go. We got 1:10:30 split. So you're basically on 2:21 pace for these top women. And once again, we do see that name of Abebi Aragawi. If Aragawi has a really big result here in Ottawa as a former world champion at 1,500 meters over 10 years ago, that's going to create ripples through the running world. It's going to be big news. It's going to be something that's going to surprise a lot of fans who watch the sport, but maybe don't know what Aragawi's been up to lately. So that's a very interesting runner to watch as we move through the second half of this marathon.
It does look like the rain has picked up a little bit here, so that actually might be great timing for these men and women as they pass that halfway point. Cool them down a little bit as things start to get tough through those Rockcliffe hills.
Yeah, you can see the rest of the marathon field as this course double backs on itself a couple of spots, and I'm sure Rory's hoping to get a few cheers from the other runners that recognize him, and the other runners maybe getting some inspiration watching this lead pack just fly through the streets of Ottawa.
Absolutely, and we have the half marathon field that is probably starting to queue up, getting down towards that start line, watching these elite men go through. A little bit difficult to be starting a race while they're finishing, but absolutely inspirational to watch them go, getting those athletes pumped up. And that is a huge, huge field of runners in our half marathon.
Both the elite men and elite women have passed the midway point of this 2026 Tamarack Homes Ottawa International Marathon. We are in Canada's national capital alongside Olympian Reid Coolsat and Jenna Ladd. I'm Arash Madani. We have at least another hour and change to go. In the mix with the lead men, Rory Linkletter, the 29-year-old from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, who finished second last year, took home a silver medal. He's in the back of this pack as these runners are into Ottawa.
Descending now down past the American Embassy, which will be to their right. They will be making a turn left onto the canal shortly. And these men are going to start to find a fairly flat surface. So for a while, they're going to cruise south down the canal. They have an out and back where they will double back, and then they will do a couple switchbacks over a very small overpass, but it is a decent steep. It takes a little bit of effort to get up. Inopportune timing for those switchbacks as they go up and over the canal to the other side. But there are quite a few switchbacks coming up, so they're going to be able to see each other very well. They're also going to be surrounded by people. So, like Linkletter said, this is going to be full of individuals that's going to get him spurred on and play into what he needs, which is the energy of the crowd. That might be extra incentive for him to make another move here.
Yeah, it's a 24K to 32K, very flat on the canal for the lead men. That's where they are right now, and this is where Rory Linkletter said, this is where I'm actually going to think about racing it. This is where he feels he can make an impact. Again, finishing second last year, he said, I'm playing out scenarios to make sure I'm not going to be caught off guard and know when to attack. He talked about this spot here, then at the 32K mark and at the 36K mark where the crossover at the canal is happening.
Yeah, a few more updates of cool stuff happening in the race here. I'm not sure what
this is our mayor. This
okay.
is he is running to end homelessness in youth in the city. So there's Ottawa Race Weekend is full of charitable donations. So our mayor is a well-known marathoner in our city. On the bike there is actually our pace funding director. So he's responsible for organizing all of the pacers for the general population. But our mayor there in the center with the shorts and ball cap, just leading a little bit of a charge here to end youth homelessness and runners, or non-runners, the runners trying to end youth homelessness. So fundraising for that. And he tends to run the marathon every year, which is great to have him out supporting a great cause and supporting this event.
Mayor Mark Sutcliffe of Ottawa, he says he has raised more than $100,000 this year for that cause.
All right, so back to a couple of the other interesting updates that I just wanted to tell people about. So John Gay, who's making his marathon debut, he actually split halfway in 1:05:06. So he's on 2:10 pace, which is very good. Getting overshadowed by the likes of Rory Linkletter here, but like John Gay, if he's running around 2:10 for a debut, I mean that's much faster than so even someone like Rory did on his debut. So he's having a really good run back, just only about a minute actually, just over a minute behind the pack here. And then the other top Canadians right now are not far behind John Gay. We got Thomas Broach, Lee Weselius, and Rob Kanko. So some of these guys are running really well. We haven't had the cameras on them, unfortunately, but they're having great races. The other interesting thing is that the one runner that I was really worried about challenging Rory the most was Shura Kitata. And I haven't seen him in this pack, and it's because he's dropped off. He's actually not even in this pack anymore. So the 2:03 guy, who's 3 minutes faster than anybody else really in this field, is no longer in this pack. And now Rory's competing against other guys who have run 2:06, 2:07. So he's kind of on equal terms. So I like his chances a little bit more right now.
I think and I'm not sure if our stats here are correct, but Kitata 53 seconds behind that main pack. That might make sense, but just based on current splits.
Yeah, Kitata came into this thing, he said, I'm fully confident, no injuries whatsoever. It added so much strength training, in addition to a focus on speed work on the track coming into this Tamarack, Ottawa International Marathon. He had been dealing with some injuries, a back issue. There was a left leg muscle that had bothered him a couple of years ago. And now he's dropped off here at the 1 hour and 20 mark as the rain continues to be a factor in the second half of this race.
Absolutely, yeah. It does look like, I'm seeing people with umbrellas out there. Some folks with, some without, so it looks like it's an on and off situation. We are out of the pothole danger zone. We do have very few on the canal, which is a well-maintained NCC pathway for these kinds of events. We're not unfamiliar to long-distance road races and cycling races. Ottawa just hosting recently a very long, up to 100K cycling event that went down almost the exact same route as our international marathon. So the city trying to maintain the roads as much as possible on the Ontario side, so the athletes can also feel reassured. As the weather starts to maybe deteriorate a little bit here, I can't quite tell that at least the roadways should feel a little safer, so if they're worried about footing, they can pick things up so slightly.
So update on the rest of the women Canadians who are up running. Alyssa Legault is actually only 20 seconds behind Natasha Wodak through halfway. So we haven't seen her on camera. She wasn't with Jessa Hansen and Natasha. But if you look back,
Wodak there.
Yeah, so if you look at Wodak there, that pack right behind, Alyssa Legault is in that pack. So Alyssa ran 2:29 last year at the marathon, Valencia, just in December. So she's coming off of a really good marathon, and she's had a great training block in Flagstaff. I was talking to her the other day. She's also under Coach Felix, who coaches Thomas Fafar from yesterday. But yeah, she's had a really good training block in Flagstaff. She's fit, she's excited, and she's been making inroads on Natasha, so who knows, it might actually be a race for that top Canadian woman. And then behind her, a little bit further, would be Jade Berube, who is making her marathon debut. So that's the top three Canadian women right now, Natasha, Alyssa, and Jade.
Well, you talked about Alyssa Legault and the 4-week block she had in Flagstaff. She did some double thresholds for the first time in her career, 2 training sessions per day, and she said that was not just new for me. She said, I loved it. I want to do more of that. And she said, working on tired legs just adds such a different dimension to your training coming in for your marathon prep.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the marathon is. It's still running fast when you're tired. And of course, you're not going to just run a hard 42K in training all the time, but you do want to simulate it to a certain extent. And whether that's doing like a 35K run every so often, or doing double thresholds. There's a lot of ways you can try to accomplish that, but getting to a state where you're quite tired and you're pushing yourself, that's what's going to make you a good marathoner. And then, of course, recovery, right? So you can't overdo it in training because you want to repeat it again, a few days later. So it's always a fine balance, but it looks like Alyssa's, it seems to have found that. So we'll see how that works out for her today. And in the second half of this marathon.
She's a runner who likes negative splits. Said she's coming into this thing. The first half will be a little more conservative. The second half of this race, Legault said, I'm going to go for it. And we're seeing that. She's trying to catch up with Wodak, not far behind. Meanwhile, Jade Berube, who you mentioned, the 28-year-old from La Chute, Quebec, first career marathon, and she said running a marathon has always been a target for me. She ran the Houston half last year, the Valencia half. Only in the last 18 months has Berube gotten into road races.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see someone do their debut because we've had some really talented half marathoners, 10K runners not take to the marathon, and some have surprisingly taken really well. So we'll see how the second half of this race goes for Jade, but so far so good for her in her first one out. Another interesting thing is that Alyssa Legault has already run 1:11:25 this year, so she used to have the Quebec marathon, half marathon record, and then Anne-Marie Comeau beat it, and then Alyssa Legault beat it again this year. So she ran a 1:11:25 just back in March before she went to Flagstaff. So we know she's in really good shape and ready to compete today.
That was a PB for her, that 1:11:25 in March. That was in New York State. Ottawa means a lot to Alyssa Legault. She qualified for the Worlds back in 2022 right here. And I asked her, last December, Valencia running 2:29:05 in the marathon. What did that do for you? And Legault, Jenna said, it made me realize I can trust my body. And
Yeah.
that's so important for an elite athlete.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just looking at her splits here at the half marathon. It hasn't updated online yet, but she's not far behind Wodak, who is a seasoned vet, someone she can lean on and follow her strategy and pace throughout. So trusting yourself and sticking to your guns throughout this whole thing. Like Reed said when we chatted, feels like an hour ago, but about the mental aspect of this sport. It's the physicality of it is one thing. We have the science and the shoes and the nutrition data, but the mental toughness, I'm sure Reed can echo this with his athletes, it feels almost like 90% of the effort. So knowing yourself, knowing your ticking points and what makes you snap and what makes you go, and the confidence it takes, that matters as much as you being well fueled and being well recovered and well rested. The way the brain works in these events is an absolute beast, and we've heard of people in those vision tunnels, or the paranoia, we like to call it, before these events. So for an elite level athlete, it's even heightened. Everything is much more difficult. The stakes are higher. There's Olympic contention, there's sponsorships, there's prize money. So for her to feel confident and focused is an absolute pleasure to hear. And I'm glad that she feels that way heading into this.
So I don't know what the cool kids say anymore, and I certainly don't know runner's lingo. Paranoia.
Paranoia.
Translate for us.
Paranoia would be sort of the jitters, the nerves, everything hurts all of a sudden, your hamstring has a tweak, your tummy feels off, your foot has a cramp, you start to get in your head about your training, you feel like you might be coming on with a cold. There's a whole bunch of things. It's the paranoia meets the marathon anticipation, and it's your brain versus body, knowing that those feelings are not necessarily valid or real, and you have to coach yourself that you are well prepared and safe, and everything's going to be fine. So we like to gently call it the paranoia and warn athletes about it, especially athletes in their debut that might not be used to those feelings in the days leading up to these events. So it's a fun way to to train our athletes, and I'm sure these elites can relate in their own special way.
Well, nearing close to an hour and a half in both the races, we see two very different races. The lead men have still quite a large pack, and the lead women look like they're whittled down to 3.
Beletta is dropped off.
Yeah. So I honestly thought it might have been the other way around. I thought the women's field looked a little bit more a little deep, but maybe that pace has just been a little bit too much for a lot of them today, and these men are hanging tough without the big name of Shura Kitata.
approaching the 30-kilometer mark for the elite men as they run along the Rideau Canal. There's a bit of a hill at Carleton University, a 2 to 3% incline there. Rory Linkletter on the far left-hand side of your screen, the Canadian. They still need to cross the Bronson Bridge at the 36-kilometer mark, and that could be an important point because it's the last real spot where you can break the race.
Absolutely, yeah. They still have a little ways to go here until that turnaround point. So that will be a bit jarring, that turnaround where it is a quick snap around heading back north on the canal. And then they meet that bridge that you were just mentioning. So they're not far away. They're not too far away here now, but they've still got a decent amount to trek before they get to that turnaround. And it is a little bit longer than heading south on the canal than it has historically been. And this race does change from year to year based on construction, based on access and a number of factors. So it's always interesting on the slight changes and undulations throughout here. So Linkletter is going to have some familiarity from last year. Some things are going to feel new, but there's no doubt that he studied it. And I can see him kind of popping out here to the left, almost looking at, like a car trying to get through traffic. What's the next move? I can almost feel the wheels turning through the screen here, but it'll be interesting to see when they make the move, and also if his peers are anticipating that, and when they make their own moves.
Rory made this point this week. He said, I'm now at the point of my career where I know I can run with everyone, but it's can I compete with them? Am I a threat? And a win, a triumph, a breakthrough here in Ottawa can answer, Reed, a lot of those questions.
Oh, a win would be amazing. There's a lot of really, really good marathoners who never win a marathon.
Right.
And it's nice to notch a win, and to do so on home soil with a very deep field would be very meaningful to Rory.
He said a career-long goal is to win a race like this.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think it's in his sights. I mean, he's been so strong and so committed to racing in these last 2 years, and really involved in improving, and like you said, he likes to share his experience, and I think that's hugely beneficial for his coaches and his peers and his team and his crew, and for Canadian running, and I think it's in his sights. So I do hope to see him continue to return to this event, whether it happens today or not. And there we go at that water bottle station. Oh, a pacer almost just stumbled there. We will see those pacers start to drop off soon as we approach that 30K mark.
Yeah, that will be the water bottle station around the 30K mark. So they may have already passed it.
They just passed it. Just passed it.
So there's a bit of a hill coming up here now as they approach Carleton University. Again, it's a 2 to 3% incline. Real strong start to 2026 as the gentlemen go splashing.
There's the pacer drops.
There goes the pacer.
Yeah.
It looks like he just went over a timing mat. So I'm guessing that was a 30K mark, and we got one pacer left. Including the pacers, there was a pack of 12 at halfway. There was a pack of 11 at 25K. So it looks like there's at least 10 there. So
sitting at 3:03 at the 30K mark for pace. And this is where we're talking about that false flat, where it is technically flattish, but there is that bit of an uphill, like Arash just mentioned. So athletes who are used to running in any sort of elevation or on any hills, Ottawa is a respectively flat course. If you're coming from Colorado, or you're coming from Kenya or Ethiopia, or anywhere where it feels like there are more hills, this is going to feel flat throughout. But for those athletes who might be elsewhere and might be training in flatter conditions too, these false flats can really load up the legs and burn up the lungs quickly.
yeah, so 3:04 pace, 3:04 per kilometer through 30K is going to net them a pace of 2:09. So it's not the quickest day out there, and maybe that's why the lead pack is still as big as it is right now. And then the women are still heading towards that 30K mark as we see that pack dwindle down to 3 there. with Kuftu, Aragawi, and I can't quite see the third athlete tucked in there.
And the course record for men was set in 2012 in 2:06:04. So it doesn't look like we may get a men's course record today, but potentially women's, which is 2:22.
Yeah, and that's Jonathan Tedeschi, one of the runners in there. He's a good youth sport runner. I believe he trains at Laval, so he might be one of the training partner of Legault, perhaps.
And we have a change for the lead Canadian women. Alyssa Legault has overtaken Natasha Wodak, the 31-year-old from Île-Perrot, Quebec. Legault, who ran a personal best 2:29:05 in Valencia last December, a Quebec record, broke a mark that had stood since 1983 in the process. Legault is now the lead Canadian. What a career it has been for Alyssa. Only started running after university. Her first marathon was in 2017. She ran it in 3 hours and 32 minutes. Fast forward nearly a decade later, and she's wiped an hour off her time.
So, Arash, all I hear you say is that
You're saying there's a chance.
I was going to say my first marathon was 3:32, so, you know, it sounds like it's possible. If Wodak can set an example for, you know, women over 40 and I can increase my speed by about 45 minutes now, it sounds like I'll be up there next year. See you then. I'm just kidding.
What happened to all that 1 in a million talk?
Yeah.
And Alyssa's sister's an Olympian. She's a triathlete, so she competes for Canada.
Wow.
And Alyssa has also dabbled in triathlon as well, but is obviously focused on the marathon now and is at the 25K mark with 6 seconds up on Natasha. So 6 seconds doesn't sound like that much, but if we have a visual on that, it's a demoralizing gap.
So the men here are just passing the Carleton University campus on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side of them, on the right-hand side of your screen, to the right-hand side of the men, left-hand side of the screen is the canal locks. So this is a crossing point for spectators as well. And you can see that little incline here happening as it rises towards the locks. And just ahead, not too far, is going to be that turnaround point right at the end of the canal before the second set of locks that lets our boats pass through. A really popular artery for houseboats, tour boats, summer boats throughout the summer season.
So we're down to one pacer for this group, as the other ones had recently dropped out, and
8 runners in that mix right there.
that's a lot more than we saw last year past 30K. So
Absolutely.
I love this. I love it when there's still a big pack. It just adds a little bit more excitement, and it's going to help Rory too. Just sort of like stay in contention, and like I said before, as long as he's very patient and not getting worried that other runners are feeling better than him. He can just stay in here and bide his time to put a little bit more, as he said before, like put a little more pace running along the canal. It's kind of where he's planning on making his move, as they have to be very close to that 32K mark that Rory mentioned to you, Arash.
Reed, do you know if they have that finish line camera ready? Because we may need it.
Yeah, you never know. It always seems very unlikely that you're going to need a photo finish in a marathon. But even last year at the World Champs, it was, just the marathon 1-2 finish was closer than the 100-meter 1-2 finish. So it happens.
The men are so close to that turnaround point here, so we'll see how they take and handle just a simple turnaround around a pylon, but it will make a difference.
And here comes Rory Linkletter. Let's go back to the men's side crew. because this is where Linkletter said he wanted to make his move. At the 32K mark, at the 180, you see the Canadian inching closer with the pack. This is by design. This was part of the game plan. How much ground can Linkletter make up for here? He's on the inside.
He doesn't have a lot of room. He's got to be careful because they are going to turn and then run north on the canal on the opposite side.
Right.
So if he wants to make that move, and he's going to stay on and hug the shoulder, well, the false shoulder here, and then make that pivot around the cone. But it will be tight.
And 180-degree turns when you're running, it doesn't really sound like that big of a deal, but when you're running, what these guys are doing, 303 per kilometer, and it's a tight turn, it completely ruins your momentum. And at this stage in the race, when you have to get back up to speed, if you have fresher legs versus tired legs, you can make a difference. So we're back here with the lead women. I can't quite. It looks like one of the women have fallen off there.
It does.
So it might be down to 2 women.
It is down to 2, yeah.
And if it is Kuftu and Aragawi, I don't know if we can still go with Aragawi's 1,500-meter speed if it comes down to a kick. That was a long time ago. But,
won a silver medal at the London Olympics 14 summers ago.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's crazy. So Kuftu from Ethiopia, she actually just ran her PB last year in Dubai. So she's coming off of a 2:22 last year in Dubai. And this year in Daegu, South Korea, she ran 2:28. Daegu, I'm not sure what the conditions were that race. I've raced in Daegu before. It's in the middle of Korea, South Korea, and it's kind of in the bowl. It holds humidity. So I'm not sure what the conditions were, but 2:28 in Daegu. She is an experienced marathoner versus Aragawi, who is a very experienced 1,500 meter. She actually even has a sub to 800 meter time, which is very, very elite amongst women, especially back in 2012, 2013. That's going to put you within the best in the world. So a very talented athlete with a huge range versus a veteran marathon.
And finished Demise of Ethiopia was the one that fell off, and so it is 2 at the top of the lead women. It is Kuftu and it is Aragawi on the women's side, the pack remaining strong on the men's front.
Yeah, and this is the turnaround right here. It's coming up. The turnaround should be any moment. And you're going to see that quick, sharp turn. Oh, no, I think they actually already made the turn. They made the turn already. They're heading back north. They are heading back north. So the turn was just beyond. So we just missed it. I was going to say, there's people running in the opposite direction. So the fellas already made that turn. It doesn't look like it affected the pack really at all.
And that's probably because they're running a pace that's well within themselves. So if they're on 208 high, 209 low pace, these guys can handle that pace. And little undulations and sharp corners aren't going to break up a pack. Versus the women. The women are actually, they've been averaging 3:21 per kilometer for 30 kilometers. That actually puts them on 2:21 pace,
wow,
right? Which is a very fast pace. And so that's why we've seen the women's pack just whittle down to 2 by the 30K mark. And 2:21 is a very fast time, especially on this course.
The men start to approach that 33, 35K point. There's still a lot of race left. So, if you're watching and wondering when they're going to make moves and breaks, the pack is still so tight. So it's not, there's time. There is time to make those moves. Not that much time, but at this speed. But there is a little bit of time left for them to jockey around through their positions and make those final breaks. Still conserving some energy here. So they don't burn out in the last little push towards the end.
The gap between first and second a year ago was 9 seconds on the men's side. They're approaching the Bronson Bridge at the 36-kilometer mark, and we mentioned it before, that could be an important point, the last real spot to break the race.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a uphill. It is very, very short, but it is a little punchy, steep uphill, and you will get crowds. So this is a time, if Rory wanted to make a move, my thoughts would be he would make it up or down that hill.
So Eric Gawi, 36 years old. I did say a wrong stat earlier. I said the next oldest elite on the women's side was born in 1991. She was born in 1990. I was only looking at the elites who had actually already run a marathon. She kind of caught me off surprise there with in the debut slot. But at 36 years old, running her very first marathon, like we talked about 14 years ago, she was the Olympic silver medalist. And 13 years ago, the world champion at 1,500 meters versus Kuftu, who is a 31-year-old Ethiopian veteran marathoner.
You know, it was interesting coming into this on the men's side when Rory Linkletter told us, you know, often people are timid in cold conditions, when it's yucky outside, maybe some runners just wait. He thought that may open a door for a win. It's been anything but. You know, it's been a pack that has remained consistent throughout. They have been going for it from the jump today.
Absolutely, yeah. Very different experience than last year. And last year also at this time, it was blazing sun.
It was.
It was very warm. I think later on in the afternoon, the heat was recorded in the low 30s with the humidex. So these conditions are extremely unfamiliar for Ottawa Race Weekend, which has been historically very, very warm after blisteringly cold winters. So, you know, Rory's Canadian, so he understands that our weather is unpredictable, and a May race could mean snow, or it could mean an inferno of heat. So I'm sure he's prepared for both of them, but it does change maybe the outcome and expectations and what he's coming into based on previous experience from last year. So a little bit more movement here happening with the pro men. A little bit more separation. It looks like the pack is also trying to find their avenues where they can take off and make moves as well.
What does Rory want to do here, Reid?
Well, that's the same thing he's been doing for the last hour and 45 minutes, is just try to conserve as much energy as possible.
Right.
And now that pace, I mean, that pace was still in there. He's hanging tough, which is good to see, but I assume he will drop off fairly soon. But, you know, if you're tucked in behind people, you're not breaking the wind, and Rory is only concerned about the win here, right? It's not going to be a PB for him. It's not going to be as fast as times he ran last year.
And that doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't. Like I said before, he would rather win this in a slow time than finish third in a fast time. This is all about racing. So it's really just about gauging what the other runners are doing. He's probably looking at these runners and looking at their body language and you know, as this guy's struggling. Sometimes people look really smooth and they actually are hurting. Sometimes Yuki Kawauchi, who won Boston back in 2018, is a runner that doesn't look like it looks like he's suffering from the gun, and he hangs tough. So sometimes you can't always tell, but that's what he's looking for, those signals, and probably looking for a good time to make his move. And he's got to think, you know, does he think he can beat these guys in a 100-meter race, or does he think these guys have the speed and he's going to have to push that pace from 2K out, 3K out. You know, maybe that's he's determining what the best way for him to hit that race. And you see they just grabbed bottles there. You know, sometimes you can't actually get a lot of that fuel to work for you in the later stages of the race, but with over 20 minutes of racing still to go, you will use this fuel. So it is important for him to keep taking this deep into the race.
So the pacer has dropped out. It's a pack of 6 now with the lead men. Rory Linkletter of Canada is among them.
The uphill is coming. They can see it. So it would be just around this bend is where they're going to make that quick loop around over to the other side of the canal, where they will hit another out and back. with another turn, and then head north to the finish. So the finish line, they can't hear because no one's there yet, but it is within sights, it's within grass. They will run away from it and then run back towards it. But just approaching here on the left-hand side of the screen or the right-hand side, they're starting to turn up now towards the exit on the overpass.
Meanwhile, here is Alyssa Legault, the 31-year-old, the lead Canadian, has surpassed Natasha Wodak, Rep Canada at the 2022 World Athletics Championships in the marathon in Oregon. The 10th fastest Canadian in history in the marathon.
Yeah, she's coming into her own right now, right? She's coming off of a big PB, 2:29 low at Valencia, PB and a half, like we've already discussed. So, and we also discussed, as you said, Arash, that she's looking to negative split this. So, yeah. When you're passing somebody else in the marathon, it's your advantage, right? You've kind of got to that same spot in the marathon, running quote unquote a little bit easier, right? It's nice to build momentum. If you go out too hard, you're putting a bit more junk in the legs. You're going to feel crappy. You're kind of holding on versus that feeling of like, moving up through the field. So mentally, it's a bit of an advantage, and it looks like she looks very composed right now. I mean, obviously, it looks like there's a bit of suffering in her face, but her body, like she's still moving very well. Ground contact time's good. Arms are pumping. She looks very focused. She still has a pacer with her, which is very advantageous.
And how about this? The move made by Rory Linkletter. He is now the leader among the elite men. The 29-year-old who hung with the pack from the beginning. He said, I know this course. I know where I want to make my move. He said, I'm not even going to think about racing until the canal. He said, at the 36-kilometer mark, just past the bridge, there's an opportunity to do it. And this is going to be competitive throughout for the final 5.5 kilometers.
So he was just on the uphill. Now he's heading down off Bronson to the other side of the canal. If he wants to hang on here, maybe a little bit of a push. This is going to get flat again, and then there's that another 180 degree turn, and it will be very, very soon. This is not a long stretch of an out and back. At this point, we're heading through our Tulip Festival area, Dallas Lake. Another beautiful, beautiful part of the course. Again, this is not their focus as the elite runners, but if Rory wants to pull away here, this is it. This is the time. As soon as they turn around, they are on the back half of this course. It is flat, it is fast, and that's where the winners are going to race. And if he wants to do it now, this is where he's got to push, but it looks like he got broken away with a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. It looks like he lost a little bit of time there on that downhill versus the other runners. But there's one thing that surprised me watching Rory run Boston, not this past Boston, but the one before. Just watching the race, at the comfort of my own home, a few times I thought he had got broken off, and he came back and he fought hard. So I learned, never count Rory out, even if it looks like he's getting gapped a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 seconds back. Even look at his body language right now; he's fighting. I think he's gonna get back onto that pack. He's still excited for the win. I did look like he made a move that, he was probably hoping was going to drop 1 or 2 of these guys, and it didn't, and that's always a bit demoralizing when okay, this is my move, and the other guys just all respond very strong. But he's a tough runner. He's super focused on that lead group right now. So let's hope he reattaches himself, and it looks like he's also running the shortest line right now.
Absolutely.
If he could just make those little advantages, I mean, maybe these guys are going to go around the puddle.
Absolutely.
And so that's going to help him just get back onto that lead pack.
And now he has the crowd advantage on his side, and this is like the back half of this race will be more populated with people, and that's where he can use that extra fuel, that extra gear. She looks so relaxed. Little wave.
Yeah, I think she may have recognized someone cheering for her on the side of the course. This is great to see Alyssa. So there we go. Rory's right back in the mix. We also have a report from the course from the lead women that Erigawi had to stop and puke.
No.
But then, okay, so here's the lead woman. So Erigawi stopped, puked, but that is her not that far off in the distance. So she rallied and got back in there. So if you look at a couple of these, the men who are running that pack too, Jonathan Tedeschi is, if he's running 2:21, that's going to be a PB for him. He's a 1:05 half marathoner, and they're probably running pretty steady. So, the lead women have fallen off maybe that pace like a little bit, just a few seconds, obviously, and then Erigawi a little bit more with stomach problems, and maybe that's because she's new to the marathon, and this is the first time that she's really fueled this much and raced. You can fuel in training, but it's a little different. There goes Natasha on the out and back. So she's still with two pacers, or at least one pacer.
But the lead woman is now Tahir Kuftu of Ethiopia, who finished third at the Beijing Marathon back in November. Kuftu Tahir, excuse me, Jenna.
I was going to say, she's just still flanked also with the pacer too.
Yeah. Earlier this year ran 2:28.23 in Korea. 30 years old, currently ranked number 106 in the world rankings in the women's marathon.
She looks incredibly relaxed, almost paced stride for stride with her pacer and her arm movements. They look totally in sync.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Linkletter, the lead man, has overtaken the lead.
This is what I love to see. You're an hour 55 minutes into a marathon, and there's still 6 guys in contention, and they are sharing the lead. They're trying to make moves. They're trying to break the other's will and spirit, and just trying to throw blows, really, like at this point.
I think my heart rate's jumped just watching him battle here. Heading north here, you can see Dow's Lake now on their right-hand side, so they've done that 180-degree turn. We're now coming up that home stretch, so this is that final push. Rory knows it. He knows how long this section is. We mentioned in the elite athlete briefing, it does feel like it goes on for a while. So we go all the way to the end of the canal. So right to the very end, you're going to start to hear the music. These guys are going to start to hear it in less than 10 minutes, give or take. But the crowds are going to start to surge and populate, especially seeing a Canadian in the lead. I think that this is going to really fuel him to the end. If he can just hang on and find an extra gear or any sort of extra incentive to get him motivated to the end, anything's possible at this point.
29-year-old Rory Linkletter of Calgary, Alberta, has had a terrific 6-month run in half marathons, but he said at this point, it's a career-long goal to win a race like this. Crossed the finish line second a year ago, 9 seconds behind the winner. And he said, at this point in my career, what I did in Ottawa in 2025 had been the biggest jump to belonging. He was so pleased with his execution from the start to finish on how he closed the race, how he started the race, got to know the course a little better. There have only been a few tweaks and adjustments to it. He knew when there were opportunities to go for it and when to back off. He was behind the pack of 8 for a lot of this race, but he knew in the second half there would be opportunities, and he has gone for it. And now look at this, with 3 or so kilometers left in this 2026 Tamarack Homes Ottawa International Marathon. Can the Canadian end up with the triumph? Can he finish with the best result of his career?
I'd just like to point out that Rory looks like he's a head taller than some of his competitors, but he's 5'11". So some of these guys behind him are, oh, there we go. They just passed him again. Let's go, Rory. Let's get back there. But Rory looks like he's got a foot above. But this is a fairly petite group of men behind Rory. So not helping with wind when he's out in front. But it looks like, wow, they're really jockeying for paces. So Reed, you've been in this position. What are they doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously you want to run behind people to get protection from the wind, but you also want to like run your own race. So I think that's what Rory was doing. You know, he was pushing the pace because he probably felt like, you know, that's in his advantage to run a little bit faster pace leading into it and tire the guys out. Ayana and Abraha actually, you know, the two of the guys in the front, they look really good as well. A couple of the other guys who are kind of behind Rory right now, they look like they're hanging on. Rory actually looks really good himself, but yeah, they're just, you know, I don't even know how much they're really thinking about things at this point, other than just like hang on, because it looks like it's just like the right turn. It looks like they're really like picking it up towards the end and trying to break each other. I think that's it might be Kimakai at the front right now. I know Elvis Chaboy, who's raced in Toronto, is also in that pack, but
3:10 pace reported at 39K.
so maybe the 39th might have been a bit slower. I'm going to guess this one's going to be a bit quicker.
Yeah, it should be.
Dave and company, let's go back to the elite women real quick because Aragawi is actually gaining. It's Kuftu who is the lead right now. The pacer is right there, but about 50 or so meters behind is Aragawi, who is sick just a few minutes ago, but she's still in the mix. We will keep you posted as we go back to the men's side and what is happening with Rory Linkletter.
Looks like he dropped off a little bit here.
Who all of a sudden is no longer on the screen.
Yeah. Oh, there he is. He's just a little bit to the side.
That's it.
Okay, he's right.
He's there.
I mean, he's
We
not
didn't
right
see
in
him.
the pack, but he's drifted further off than this before, and also again, it looks like he's taking the shortest line. You don't need to stay on the right hand. You know, the runner's right, our left, but the runners. You don't need to stay on the right hand. You're not driving a car. You got the whole road here, and Roy's looking ahead and reading the tangents properly, and he's right back in the mix now.
It's Elvis Jaboy who is the leader. Jizaliwa Ayana in second. That's for the lead men. On the women's side, it remains Kuftu.
You can see the pacer encouraging her on, pulling her forward with the hand, saying, go, go, go.
I almost wish the pacer was not involved anymore, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
It's a huge advantage for Kuftu. And of course, Aragawi had to stop and dispose of her stomach contents. But, you know, at this point, it's such a big advantage for Kuftu to have that pacer. And the pacers are nice to set the pace and make sure everything is going well. But when it comes down to a race at the very end, yeah, I wish he'd just drop out and we just see the two athletes go out like we're seeing on the men's side here, right? It's only the racers that are left.
Linkletter looking to make a move.
His positioning is so interesting too. You know, I would love to be in his head right now, knowing where he's going to go, because we are approaching that finish line. You're probably starting to hear some of the noise. This is the last straw. This is it. This is where he's going to. There we go. He's doing a little surge there at the end. So he's pulling out, like you said, Reed. He's not a car. He can do whatever he needs to do to get ahead, and if that's taking the shortest line and pulling in tight towards the edge, absolutely. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, now we're down to 5. So Kipkemboy, Abraha, Ayana, and Mulugutu Debasu are running with Rory right now, and yeah, it's getting down to the nitty gritty. They're past 2 hours in the marathon. They have about, I'm going to guess, less than 7 minutes of running. So
We saw a sprint in the final 1,000 meters of the 10K last night.
I think we're going to see a sprint here at the end. I think it's going to be close. I hope those finish line cameras are ready. But it's a close call. It's anybody's race at this point.
It is pan flat along the canal all the way to the finish. Rory Linkletter is where he wants to be. He said, my ideal scenario is to be with the lead pack going on to the Rideau Canal. He's had brief glimpses of the lead, but this is how competitive it has been for the last 2 hours plus.
I don't know the last time we've seen a pack of 5
This late.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, past the 40K mark. It rarely happens in any sort of big marathon. So this is really exciting. And honestly, like Kip Kemboy is leading, but it's anybody's race right now. They're all within less than a second of each other. Kip Kemboy has done most of the leading, I think, in the last K or two. But Abraha and Ayana look very good. And Debasu and Linkletter seem to be just like kind of hanging on in that last K or so.
It's nothing like Canadian athletics in 2025 giving us all a little bit of a heart race. So, I mean, this is a great entertainment for our city. I mean, I hope that we can see Rory find a little extra gear here in the end, use the crowds to his advantage.
Okay, Aragawi has made up a lot of distance here.
That
Less
looks like
30
a
meters.
20 meter rather.
20 meter.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see that little bit of distance between the pacers, not helping out Kuftu quite as much anymore. So
5
this is a
kilometers
turnaround
to go on the women's side.
Less than 2 for the men's coming up to that final K. They're going to see those barricades coming up. And it'll be interesting to see this final push, this final surge.
Yeah, we got or is that Chaboy?
Chaboy.
It's
Elvis
actually-
Chaboy
yeah,
of
it is
Kenya,
Chaboy.
Gisela Ayana of Ethiopia.
Yeah, so yeah, Elvis Chaboy. I should recognize him. He has run Toronto a couple of times and making a move with Ayana, a big lead. And on the women's side, it looks like is that Aragawi? Is she pretty much?
She's on her. She's passing her.
Wow.
So just a few moments ago, it was Aragawi who was sick. Abeda Aragawi literally was throwing up on the course, was far behind, and now has passed Tahir Kuftu. 14 years ago, an Olympic silver medalist in the 1500 on the track. And now, at the age of 35, is in the driver's seat. The question is, can Aragawi finish? Has represented Ethiopia internationally, then went on to represent Sweden.
It's interesting, the pacer's still hanging on here right at the end. I'm assuming he'll drop pretty soon. And the lead men just coming in here at the end. This is the final push, passing the Pretoria Bridge here. This is those last 800 meters or less.
Will it be Ayana? Will it be Chaboy?
And Linkletter right there in third, right behind. This is another men's potentially photo finish.
A look from Chaboy over his left shoulder. He sees right there with him is the Ethiopian, Chaboy from Kenya.
Is used to racing in Canada. His PB is actually from the Toronto Waterfront Marathon back in 2023, and
Ran 2:09:20 that year.
yeah, and you know, in the fall of last year, he was still 2:09:31 at a race in France. So even though he didn't set his PB last fall, he was only 10 seconds off of it. So you know, he doesn't have the fast PB that a lot of these other guys do, but he wins races in the 2:09 range. So this is kind of like his specialty right here.
What a finish this is shaping up to be at the 2026 Tamarack Homes Ottawa International Marathon. Neck and neck. Chaboy versus Ayana. Yesterday in the 10K, it was a near photo finish, a similar ending to the race. And now for the entire marathon, 42.2 kilometers, comes down to this.
I know the organizers are down there making sure that if they need to capture any photo finish, that they're able to. But we do see Chaboy pulling ahead here. may not need it.
Couple of strides advantage for Cheboy, the 30-year-old.
Well, the advantage that Ayana and Rory have over Cheboy are that they're 206 guys. The disadvantage is that they ran that this year. So Cheboy would be theoretically a lot fresher not having run a high-quality marathon in the past couple months as these other two guys have. So
And here we go, that final gated finish. We have the finish line coming up right ahead. The athletes can see it, crossing that pedestrian arch followed by the finish line. The crowds are into it. The half marathon also officially underway as well.
Canada has been friendly to Elvis Cheboy. Previously the winner in Toronto, and in one of the most competitive races in the history of the Ottawa International Marathon. In 2026, it will be the Kenyan who will prevail. Elvis Cheboy, the wave, the win in 2026 in Ottawa. Rory Linkletter will finish third and be the top Canadian. He was right there with the pack for the duration. In the last kilometer and a half, the gap finish, Linkletter crosses at 2:09:42. So the top Canadian male and the overall bronze medalist. Solid run for Rory.
He gave himself a clap there in the end, so that is greatly reassuring to see that he knows he pushed hard in this race all around.
And that's really a big ask to run 206 low in Boston in April and come back again in May. So, you know, it's very impressive for him to do that and to do it so successfully. So, I'm sure, like we said, he's his worst critic. He wanted to win this race, but he really should be happy with that performance.
Absolutely.
Rory I can see his coach there, John Green, there at the finish line with Rory. Interestingly, we got John Gay still running a very good, we haven't seen him for a while, but the splits show that he's still on a very good pace. He's well past the 40K mark. So hopefully we get to see John Gay finish as well as, there he is.
Making his marathon debut at the age of 29 out of Kelowna, BC. What a grind of a career this has been for Gay the last few years. You go back to 2023, tore his left hamstring. The following year, blew his Achilles, and then the right hamstring flared up on him, only for the back to give out last year. And at one point, Gay just had to be wondering, what is this going to take? He went down to Flagstaff, actually trained with Rory Linkletter and Rory's coach, John Green. They relocated, he and his wife, in January of last year, and John said, that just breathed life into my career. And now, in his first career marathon, John Gay is going to end up being the #2 Canadian in this Tamarack Homes Ottawa International Marathon.
Yeah, this is a really good debut. And John, obviously, is a very, very tough runner, great steeplechaser. To tell you the truth, I didn't know how he would do in the marathon. I went on a training run once with Rory and John in Flagstaff, and those guys looked beat up. And John's biomechanics were very inefficient then. And looking at, he's past 41K in the marathon. He looks really good. He looks a lot smoother than he did in the last couple of years, just as far as just the way his body's moving. And it shouldn't really be that smooth at this far into your first marathon. So I had doubts about John. I'm sorry if he's hearing this right now. We know he's a tough runner. We know he's a huge talent. But I don't have the same doubts anymore. He looks really good running this marathon this late in the race, and even his composure. He looks like he's well within himself. I'm not sure what his final time is going to be here,
I
but
think he's doing great.
yeah, it's going to be a great debut. I mean, if he can break 2:14, you know, we saw Ben Flanagan run his debut of 2:14 last. Well, there's somebody else he's passing, but yeah, I'm excited for John. I think he's going to be happy with this, and I think he's once he crosses that finish line, he's already going to be plotting.
Absolutely,
his
he's
next
going
race.
for it now for this final stretch too. Again, he was a Canadian 3,000 meter steeplechase champion in 2021 and 2022. He went to the Tokyo Olympics, finished 15th in the steeplechase. That Achilles injury forced him to miss Paris, and now has redefined himself and his career as a marathoner.
I think he has been he's been in Ottawa for a couple of days doing podcast interviews with Rory and the likes, and has been really invested in this race and this community, and it's so good. I've been rooting for him secretly all week, and it's so good to see him finish so strong. I don't know if I saw a little smirk smile there, but I'm thrilled, and I can't wait to see what he does.
So that's Blake Buis from the States, who just finished, and then another. And then there we go, John Gage, 2:14:15 or so. Great. I'm really happy for John, and I hope he's happy with that one too. I think that's Ben Rosa, also from the United States. So if that's correct, and that is no, it's not Ben Rosa. Okay, back to the women's race. Now we got Iragawi. All by herself. Now she's using the pacer. So they both got, so in the end it's fair. They both got to use the pacer solo for a little bit. I'd still like to see that pacer out of there and just have the duel, but at least it wasn't as one-sided as I had thought earlier.
And I mean, Aragawi is close to the women's record. It is possible here, so we might see some course record here if this pace is maintained. I mean, Reed, you're faster with the math, but she's at a 3:30 pace at 39K when we last checked about 3 minutes ago. So course record at 2:22 would be tight, but possible.
Yeah, I mean, she was on 2:21 mid pace. I haven't seen any of this, like the cumulative times lately. If we get a 40K split here, we'll have a really good idea. But if this is, I think we can see the 40K timing mats right there. Boom, boom. So we're at and if you add 7 minutes to 2:16, they've slowed down a little bit. But
40K, 3:28.
What?
Yeah, so they've slowed down a little bit. I don't think she's going to get the course record, but it's going to be a great result either way. I think, like I said before, if she did well here, it's going to send ripples through the World Athletics fans and the distance running world. And I think this is going to springboard her to potentially like a bigger marathon coming up. Like, you know,
Well, the most impressive part of this, it's her marathon debut.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Marathon debut, and I'm sure a lot of people have not heard her name in a long time. She actually moved back to Ethiopia. She's married to Yaman Sagai, who's a great marathoner in his own right. So
She looks so comfortable.
yeah, and for having puked.
Yeah, and you know, she's got also long sleeves on. We haven't seen any of the lead women in a full long sleeve set too, so she must be pretty warm.
Yeah, she may be inexperienced with the marathon,
Absolutely.
where, you know, she was a bit chilly at the beginning of the race and thought, I don't want to be cold. The other runners knew that it's a marathon. They're going to heat up, and 10 degrees actually isn't cold. So yeah, she's learning a lot. I'm sure she's going to learn a little bit or a lot about her fueling, what she was taking in the race, how her stomach reacts to a certain amount or a certain type of product. As we talked about earlier, the gut training, this in itself will be a good gut training run for her as well.
She's absolutely going to be a runner to watch.
14 years ago, a silver medalist in the 1,500 meters at the London Olympics. Aragawi in her marathon debuts, as we talked about, sick about 30 minutes ago, was able to rebound, trailed by about 400 meters, and now look at the gap.
Pacers dropped officially.
Ran a half marathon in Lisbon in March of this year in 1:11:29. Jenna wants the pacer to go away. Aragawi might just run by him.
Yeah, we need her front and center here for that finish, but I'm sure he'll let her go for the end. But it's all eyes on Aragawi here.
I don't know what they're doing at Station 32. Our Ottawa firefighters are watching. Harley Monahan and the crew. Tell them to get this pacer out of the way, Harley.
Yeah, this is Felix Ngedic. He's a veteran pacer, so he's doing a really good job encouraging and leading the way. Felix is also a pacer at the Toronto Waterfront Marathon and comes every year. Yeah, him and his buddy Sawston do a great job at ensuring that the women are running even pace.
Yeah, he's committed to seeing her through.
She doesn't need him anymore.
No. That's all right. So they just passed Victoria Bridge here. So that is sort of the iconic last little landmark in the Ottawa Marathon. And that is the signal that you are 1 kilometer less and you are hitting its final 800 meters coming up shortly. So she is no doubt hearing that finish line ahead. She cannot see it yet, but it is so close, just past that 41K point out of 42.2. So we're seeing those elites just wrapping up here. Really great to see the crowd support out there. No obstructions this year with any confetti or bubbles. So thank you to all the spectators for respecting the elite space at the finish line here.
It is a family affair in Ottawa for the Aragawis. 13 years ago, her husband won this race in the nation's capital. And now, 14 years removed from an Olympic podium, there is nobody in sight behind her. Aragawi's marathon debut, one for the books.
Absolutely. She looks still so calm, so relaxed as we wrap up these final 100 meters. Almost approaching that course record. I think it's within reach. I don't doubt it.
Yeah, Sagai actually won here in Ottawa back in, her husband won back here in 2018, and also back in 2014 as well. He has run a ton of marathons. He has finished second at Boston, second at the World Champs. He won Fukuoka in 2016. I was in that race. He beat me by a couple minutes. Yeah, so he's got a lot of experience. So I guess he's imparted some wisdom to Aragawi, who has always been a massive talent, but really cool to see move up in distance now.
Here's that last turn here, and the course record with less than 1 minute away. And we were gunning for a course record for the elite women. Our elite director was asking all the elites, someone to please beat it. And it looks like we are on pace for it.
2:22:17 is the record set back in 2018. The question now is just history. Can Abeba Aragawi do it? The pacer urging her.
We're not at those barricades yet, but we are close. So we are going to be so close to potentially hitting it.
What is left in the tank?
I think we're too far out for the course record.
I think so. Yeah, I was going to say, we might be, I don't know if she's going to kick it up.
Yeah.
But she also, like you said, she already emptied her stomach, so she's not running on a lot of fuel, quite literally right now.
Yeah, even just from the 40K split, which she crossed those mats, it would have been a big ask to run like a low six.
She'll miss it by less than a minute.
Yeah. So she, and like I said, if she runs under 2:23 here, that's a big result. She's running solo. She would have had to run her last 1,500 meter in about 4 flat.
Absolutely.
Which I know she could do, but maybe not after 42 kilometers and 14 years later.
Absolutely.
This is a very good result for Aragawi.
And that's the directors pulling the pacer to the side, making sure that she has that photo finish.
Yeah.
And it is all daylight from here. Aragawi's maiden voyage, a golden one. The winner of the 2026 Tamarack Homes Ottawa International Marathon, it's Aragawi who does it.
Less than a minute over that course record too. Really, really incredibly impressive. And Reed, you mentioned her at the start, and you were kind of surprised to see her in the field and did a little bit of digging. I think this is the story of the day. I think this is amazing.
Yeah, so she had married a Swede, so she still competes for Sweden, even though she lives back in Ethiopia now. But yeah, when I saw her name on the start list, I thought, that can't be.
Right.
And but then you know, with the Sweden affiliation beside her name, I was like, oh, I mean, it has to be.
It has to be.
Yeah, and then of course the pace was so fast it just dwindled that pack. They did slow down a lot, I would say, in the last like 7K. You know, once the pack fell apart, and you know the places, especially in the last few K, like she almost knew she was going to win, right? So it wasn't like what we saw last night with Florence Caron. She knew she was going to win, but she still powered all the way through to the finish line. And sometimes in the marathon, especially in your first one, you know, I give her all the grace to just enjoy that in the last 2K as much as possible without putting yourself into more pain and potentially having to stop and puke again by upsetting your stomach. So she may have just been, you know, doing as much as she needed to do to get that win. And here we see Kuftu coming in second, and I think she knows she had a big lead to third place, and she's not concerned about time anymore. She you know, to finish second in this race and collect that prize money is all that she wants to do right now. Get to that finish line and be done with this. But a good race for Kuftu to come here and finish second.
I think today is a great example of you never know. You know, the conditions and stomach and fuel. You know, you can have the best of intentions and prep and mentality and high support. And who knows? You never know.
There we go.
The silver medal.
Well, over 2 minutes, about 2 minutes in arrears of Abeba Aragawi.
So Alyssa Legault, the lead Canadian, Natasha Wodak right there, and the podium is now complete on the women's side. Exhaustion, euphoria, elation, and gratitude.
Well earned, well earned.
So that's Betty Chep-Career, who just finished third. She actually just ran the Toronto Marathon in the fall.
This is Alyssa Legault. If you're just joining us from Ile Perrot, Quebec, only took up marathon running in 2017, less than 10 years at this. She ran a personal best 2:29:05 in Valencia last December. 2:29:05, a Quebec record that had stood since 1983, is the 10th fastest Canadian in the history of the marathon. And she got a chance to represent Canada at the World Athletic Championships in Oregon back in 2022, and she said, hey, I want some more of that national team. She said it was a surprise to make it, but now that I got a taste of it, I want to do more.
Yeah, she looks just as relaxed as she did running through Rockcliffe. Obviously, like, she's pushing here. It's been a long time, but she looks relaxed enough for this last kilometer in. As she makes this final turn in, those gates just in sight, coming ahead, and that final finish line, she can probably hear it from where she's at.
So, interesting story. Alyssa Legault broke Jacqueline Garreau's Quebec record. So, Jacqueline Garreau won the Boston Marathon in 1980, but was not actually the first woman to cross the finish line. That was Rosie Ruiz, who took a public transport to get to the finish line and jump back out, and was quickly disqualified, but Jacqueline Garreau from Quebec was the winner that year, and she had a 2:34. marathon, I think back then. But anyway, she had the Quebec record for many years. And Alyssa Legault now owns that record at 2:29.05, the fastest Quebec record. So here's Alyssa going through, passing some of the other male elite runners. We're going to see, she's actually running, wow.
Oh, it is.
She's actually running, yeah, she's running very fast. I didn't realize she was on this fast of a pace. I haven't seen a split for a while, but she ran 2:29.05 on perhaps the fastest course in the world at Valencia.
She's getting cheered on there by some of the men, telling her to go, 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 giving her that moment, which is incredible.
Yeah, and we all know that Ottawa isn't the fastest course. It's a bit of a challenging course with the hills, and she probably won't PB, but she's not going to be far off of it.
Yeah, 2:29.05 is the PB.
Yeah.
Very close.
She's almost, I mean, she's, maybe she will PB. I don't know. She's going to miss it just by a bit, but by far, this is her best marathon performance ever. She being like less than 6 seconds or something off of her PB at Ottawa, by far, best performance of Alyssa Legault's career. That is a big step for Alyssa. That is very exciting to see.
The top Canadian in 2026, Alyssa Legault at the Tamarack Homes Ottawa International Marathon. She stuck to the game plan. She said the first half of the race, I'm going to be a little more conservative. The second half, I'm going to go for it. And the strategy paid off. What a run by Legault, who at the age of 31, in a lot of ways, her running career, her marathon career, is just getting started.
Well, if we've seen anything this weekend, it's that 31 is, young.
The new 23?
Yeah, it's the new 23. So, if she can hang on like Wodak for another 15 years, she's got plenty of time to continue to improve and grow. And as we, have seen now with technology, that's adorable. With technology, we can see, the improvements of the shoe. We can see the improvements of the nutrition and the research. So it's only going to be an uphill battle for her, or a downhill battle, I should say, for her here, with all of the extra support she will have over the next decade.
Yeah, she did what she set out to do, and that's running a negative split. She was 1:14.53 through half. So if you think of 1:15, 7 seconds slower, that's a 2:30 marathon. So she was on pace for 2:29 high, and then she comes through in 2:29.12. Not officially, but it looked like 2:29.12. So very strong race. To me, that shows that there's a lot more to come from Alyssa Legault. So another young Quebec star on the women's side here at the Ottawa race weekend. And here we have Natasha. Still flanked by pacer Rob to her right.
11th career marathon for Natasha Wodak. Such a veteran of the 10K race here in Ottawa. She's run at least 10 of them. Wodak had hoped to run at 2:28. She's a little off that pace now, but she said, look, I know I can persevere. I will be hurting. Wodak just continue to change things she feels she needs to in her workouts and in her training. She realizes at the age of 44, it's important to adapt.
Yeah, she looks just like Legault. Like, she looks comfortable. She looks relaxed. I mean, we're not having the camera waves and the thumbs up, but she doesn't look like she's straining. She doesn't look like she's uncomfortable here. Looks like she definitely belongs.
I'm going to take a different take.
Yeah, I mean, you know her really well.
She looks like she wants this to be done in 2 seconds.
I was going to say, if you compare her face to mine at the end of a marathon, she looks great.
Oh, she does. But compared to, and looks like she's picking it up a little bit right now, but she looks a little shell-shocked, and she also looks like she's sitting a little bit back. I'm going to guess her hips and quads are quite tired right now. And for good reason. She's running a 2:32 marathon, so nothing to sneeze at. A very tough race, but yeah, she definitely looks like she's just putting one foot in front of the other right now, just trying to get to the finish line.
let the record know that Rodak, I think you look great. Lee says you look like you're struggling.
Natasha says, this is still my passion. This is still my career. Is on track to make Team Canada for the half marathon. Join the national team in Copenhagen. There's the smile. Wodak will be the #2 elite female Canadian in 2026.
See, Reed? There you go, liar.
Well, she's got the smile. She's happy about it. That's good to see. But just the way she was running led me to believe that she is hurting. Oh, that front of the camera there, that's Tom Longboat's great-great-grandson.
Yes.
Great story there. Christian Jameson being interviewed. So we got to get time on that. Tom Longboat's best marathon ever was 2:24. And it's a lifetime goal of Jameson. He has the white arm sleeves and the red being interviewed.
Right in the center of the screen.
Yeah, so it's a lifetime goal for him to get his great-great-grandfather's PB.
He's run Boston a couple of times, and he says that is the goal. Now a dentistry student at Western University. Just to wrap on Wodak, 13 years after running her first marathon, finishing as the #2 Canadian, sharing a laugh and talking it through with Alyssa Legault, who won it all. Natasha kind of piecing together exactly how this race on this course went this morning.
Yeah, and I mean, I would love to be a fly in that little conversation there to see, or a mouth reader to be able to see what's going on. But, you know, she knows this course so well. There's no real surprises. It's going to be how her body and mind feel in the day. So, you know, unless something happened on the course that was unique with a pacer or another competitor or, you know, God forbid, a spectator or something like that, there shouldn't have been a surprise. It's just based on how the morning went, how the weather went, how the rain went. It'd be interesting to see her feedback. And I know, Reed, you'll get a lot of that feedback later on today. But I think she did great overall.
Yeah.
What a legend.
Yeah, I mean, a good result. A great result from Alyssa, a good result from Natasha. I hope she's happy with that. I know she's, you know, she'll want more from it, but
absolutely.
I'm not sure what we have here. On the men's side, we didn't cover the top 3 Canadians. We took Rory, John Gay, and then I think Lee Waselius was the 3rd Canadian today. And now we're still looking for the 3rd Canadian woman to come through the line. I don't know if it's going to be Jade Berube, Claudine Soucy, Catherine LeBlanc. There was a few of them up there.
So let's take a look at the men's finish as the women now are continuing to cross this finish line. We have gold, silver, bronze on both the men's and the women's side. Look, Elvis has entered the building. Elvis leaves triumphant, but I want to start with our bronze medalist, the Canadian Rory Linkletter, and what we saw from him. He was with the pack, a pack that was 8, and then it was 6, and then it was 5, and Rory took the lead a few times, ends up finishing bronze. As Elvis exits, what are our thoughts first on Rory, Jenna?
I mean, it's not far. He was only a few seconds behind first last year.
9, yeah.
Yeah, he's not far off again this year. So that's got to be, you know, tough to manage mentally. But I think he stuck it out in a very competitive field of well-prepared men. So I think that he did a great job, and I think he pushed when he wanted to, and I think he stuck to his plan. And it is what it is. And again, he is so close in contention. And you mentioned before that he didn't know if he felt like he could race with these men. And absolutely, I think if you're just looking at these times, there's no doubt about it. It's not a question anymore. And now it's about believing that and applying that mindset going forward.
17 seconds away from winning.
Yeah, like Jenna said, like he's up there and he's competing. I just think that he has been so consistent in the last couple of years. That's across the half marathon, Boston, Ottawa, Chicago last year, Boston, Ottawa this year. He's sitting on what is that, 5 really good marathons in the past 2, just over a year, really, like in 2025 and 2026. That's really impressive, and that's typically what you see before you get another breakthrough, right? You have a lot of performances, like good performances around the same level, and then you get the next one. You don't often see just big jump, big jump, big jump after big jump, right? So he made that big jump, and now he's following it up with very consistent results. So it'll be really interesting to see. As we move into the end of this year, we're going to start thinking about Olympic qualifying for 2028, and there's a lot of names in there, and Rory right now is the most consistent on the men's side.
Well, and he says, look, LA 2028 is absolutely on the radar. LA 2028 is absolutely a goal. We'll see how that transpires for Linkletter, who did well in Boston, although he was disappointed by that performance. Chaboy and Ayana, it was neck and neck coming down the stretch, and ultimately Elvis ends up winning on the men's side.
Yeah, I mean, again, another performance there where we were, making sure that there was a finish line camera in case it got neck and neck, very similar to the 10K yesterday. But I think, I don't want to say may the best man win, but whoever takes it, takes it. That he made the break at the right point, kept the energy intact right until he knew he could pull away and took the win. And I think it was a win well earned.
Yeah, this is his specialty. He's won 3 marathons now, in 209 low to 209.30, these guys have much faster PBs, and maybe we'll see Elvis go on to run a bit quicker, but that's. He's dangerous when it comes to a 209 race, especially in Canada. He's won Toronto now and Ottawa.
And 14 years after winning Olympic silver in the 1500, in her marathon debut, Abeba Aragawi wins the women's marathon here in Ottawa in 2026.
Hours ago, Reed brought her to my attention and kind of gave me her life story. And she was, in our list of athletes, she was down near the bottom in her debut. We didn't have stats. She wasn't someone that was, in that radar necessarily. But Reed was like, wait a minute. And here she is. I think that's the story of the day for sure. I think she is going to be one to watch. What an incredible finish. And she looked comfortable.
Nearly at a course record at the age of 35 in her marathon debut.
Yeah, and not only that, but she ran. Look at the final time now. Is she was actually under 223, 222.55. Second place 225. Third place 220. She annihilated that field, right?
Absolutely.
With stopping to puke, it's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the running media outlets how they cover this, because I think it's going to be, Citius Magazine and Let's Run and all these sort of things are going to really pick up on this, and it's going to be a big story. It's really exciting. It's really cool that Aragawi made her marathon debut here in Ottawa.
Yeah, I think this is one of those, theatrical stories that you see in the films, of someone coming from somewhere and doing something extraordinary. So, and this is what makes this day and this event so special, is that you get stories like this, and it's in the elite field as well.
Yeah, if we're looking at the screen, I just have to say, the clock that we saw and the times are a bit off, so it didn't look like Aragawi actually went under 223. But the more important thing, I'm looking at Alyssa Legault, top Canadian. The clock that we were watching, it looked like she did not run a PB. This one shows that she's running a PB by 11 seconds. So sometimes the results, when they come out and they're first shown like this, they might not be accurate. So let's not get too excited about Alyssa Legault running a PB until we see the official results. But needless to say, Alyssa finishing 8th in this such a deep field. We saw, if we look at the beginning of that race, and there were 10 women running with behind those pacers, and we didn't even see Alyssa in any screenshot for a long time. And then she comes and finishes 8th in that field, and she just worked her way through it. Like, what a great result. If it's a PB or not a PB, a great result nonetheless.
Absolutely.
So I want to preface this. Melinda Elmore is not here. She's unable to compete. Ran for Canada at Paris 2024 in the marathon, the only Canadian woman who competed there. So that said, was there a changing of the guard today with Alyssa Legault in women's marathoning in Canada, or not yet?
I'm not going to say a change in the guard per se, but definitely adding more names into the mix. So when Alyssa ran 229 last year, Erin Mawhinney running 229 this year, it put a couple more names in that 229, like that sub 230 group that we haven't seen for a while. So,
Right.
Melindy and Natasha have been doing it for a while. Leslie Sexton, Dana Pidareski, Rachel Cliff as well, and Emily Talon. So they were kind of the only ones, and now they're a lot of them are aging out, and we're seeing an influx of these new ones. So it's not quite changing the guard because the other women are still around, but it's definitely adding some more names into that mix.
It's an overlap.
Yeah, exactly.
So many great stories from this weekend. We saw Florence Caron yesterday in the 10K dominate. We saw the race coming down the stretch on the men's side with Andrew Alexander persevering. Head-to-head on the men's side, a 2-second differential, and then we saw the emergence of an Ethiopian Swede in a marathon debut win this. What a weekend this has been.
It has been. Every year is unique. I could use less anxiety over over these finishes, but it was interesting, and that's what makes this exciting for us and for the sport in general, because you never know. You never know.
Yeah, it's such exciting races, and it would have been so hard to call in the beginning. Some of how close those finishes were, and Elvis Chaboy, I don't think he was ranked in the top 8 as far as PB, and he comes out on top. A lot of the tension was on Ben Flanagan and Thomas Fafard with the slightly, the maybe 10-second faster PB than Andrew Alexander, but he just races tough and he wins. So yeah, that's what's great about race day. You can't call it. You can't look at paper and decide who's going to be the winner. It's a surprise 1,500-meter silver medalist, from 2012. Yeah, lots of surprises.
Ends up winning this thing. What a weekend it has been. Thanks to all of our crew braving the conditions down there on the race. Here in studio, Fareed Coolsat and Jenna Ladd, I'm Arash Madani saying so long. This has been the Tamarack Homes Ottawa Marathon.